I woke up to a woman pressed against me, whispering that we should live together. When I opened my eyes, I saw Chen Qingxue, a beautiful woman I knew was supposed to be dead. I panicked and pushed her away. Then I looked around. I was in my old house, the mud walls, the wooden beams, the old newspaper on the windows. But this house collapsed 10 years ago. I looked at my hands. They were young and strong, not the weak, spotted hands of an old man. I had been reborn, sent back in time. 2 more women stood at the door, Lin Wanner, small and pretty, and Zhou Mingcui, dark-skinned and striking. These were the 3 widows who lived next door. All alive. I almost cried. Chen Qingxue thought I rejected her when I pushed her away. She straightened her back and asked me for a straight answer, yes or no. If no, they would leave right now. I remembered everything from my past life. It was the winter of 1980. My wife had died of cancer 6 months earlier. These 3 widows had been kicked out by their in-laws after their husbands died. Their own families refused to take them back. They had no food, no protection. Village thugs harassed them constantly. They came to me, hoping we could take care of each other. Last time, I said no. I was afraid of gossip. Then later, I got caught in a mudslide while hunting in the mountains. These 3 women found me and tried to save me. Lin Wanner was crushed by a boulder and died on the spot. Zhou Mingcui's leg was broken by a falling tree. She bled out. Chen Qingxue carried me down the mountain but got swept away by a second mudslide. She pushed me into a cave first. I survived. All 3 of them died saving me. So this time, I said yes. I told them this would be their home now, and nobody would ever bully them again. They broke down crying. They had been alone and desperate for so long. They were hungry. They hadn't eaten in 2 days. When I asked, they tried to deny it, but Lin Wanner's stomach growled loudly. She turned bright red. I smiled and said, "Come on, let's go find something to eat." I told the 3 of them to follow me outside. The night was freezing cold. We were all shivering. I led them to a corner of the yard where I had a pile of firewood stacked up. I told them to help me move it. Under the wood, I dug into the dirt with my bare hands and pulled out an oilcloth bundle, about 10 pounds of sweet potatoes I had secretly hidden. I had to hide food from my own family. My mother and my 2 older brothers would have taken everything if they knew. They always did. When our family split up, my brothers got the big houses, the farmland, the animals. I got this broken-down shack at the edge of the village. I worked the field since I was a teenager, but every bit I earned went to the family. When it was time for me to get married, my mother said there was no money, no bride price, no wedding banquet, not even new clothes. My wife married me anyway, not caring that I had nothing. When she got sick later and was coughing up blood, I knelt at my mother's door begging for money to save her. My mother sat there cracking sunflower seeds and told me I was bad luck, that I had killed my father and now I wanted to drag her down too. She said she was saving money to build big houses for my brothers. My wife died because of that. The 3 widows understood. They had been treated the same way by their own families. We went into the kitchen and I boiled the sweet potatoes. When they were done, the women grabbed them and ate like they were starving, because they were. I didn't eat. Just watching them filled me up inside. In my past life, these 3 women died to save me. In this life, giving them a hot meal was enough to make me feel at peace. But they saved the biggest sweet potato for me and insisted I eat it. They said we were family now. That word hit me hard. I hadn't heard anyone call me family in a long time. I took a bite. It was sweet. Later, I brought them to the bedroom. There was only 1 wooden bed, but enough blankets. I told them to sleep here tonight. They looked at each other. They thought I wanted something in return. They started undoing their clothes. Under the dim oil lamp, the 3 women started undressing. Each of them was beautiful in her own way. Qingxue was slender and graceful, Mingcui was curvy, and Wanner was the youngest with soft, fair skin. I froze for a second. Qingxue said quietly, "You kept your promise, so we'll keep ours. Tonight, we'll take care of you." Wanner even slipped her clothes off her shoulders and told me to come over. I shouted at them to stop. I didn't mean it like that. They were confused. If not for that, then why did I take them in? I took a deep breath. I couldn't tell them the real reason, that in my past life they died saving me. So I told them a small lie instead. I said they deserved to be treated well. I said if I stood by and watched them starve or freeze to death, my conscience would never let me rest. I'd rather be dead than live with that guilt. I'm a man, but I'm not an animal. I pulled an old blanket from the cabinet, spread it on the floor, and told them to take the bed. I would sleep on the ground. That was how it would be from now on. They didn't need to be afraid. Wanner protested. She said I was the head of the household and shouldn't sleep on the floor. But I lay down with my back to them and told them to sleep. We had a lot to do tomorrow. The room went quiet. I could feel them standing there, staring at my back for a long time before they finally climbed into bed. They whispered to each other under the blanket. Warner worried that maybe I looked down on them because they had been married before. But Qingxue said it didn't matter. No one would believe the truth anyway. The truth was that none of them had ever actually been with a man. Qingxue had been sold by her stepmother to a dying man who couldn't even lift his arm. Mingxue was married off at 15 to a man with tuberculosis who coughed blood on their wedding night and died half a year later. Warner's parents were gamblers who sold her to a village fool who didn't even understand what a wedding night was. He later fell off a cliff and died. 3 women, all married on paper, all still untouched. Yet everyone called them husband killers. Qingxue told the other 2 that from now on, they should give their whole hearts to me. She said I was their man, their sky. No matter what happened, they would never betray me. The other 2 agreed without hesitation. Mingxue said she could never repay my kindness. Warner said she would take good care of me for the rest of her life. The next morning, I opened my eyes and found the bed empty. All 3 women were gone. I sat up in a panic, thinking something had happened. But when I opened the door, I saw the 3 women had already been working. Qingxue was sweeping the yard. Mingxue was washing clothes at the well with her hands red from the cold, and Warner was scrubbing the old cooking pot. The whole yard was spotless. Qingxue smiled and told me there was a warm sweet potato waiting for me. I ate it, then went inside and grabbed my homemade bow and arrows, a bamboo bow with sharpened bone arrowheads. I needed to go hunting before the snow came. We needed meat and animal skins to make warm clothes for winter. In my past life, I spent decades hunting. I started as a clueless kid who could barely catch a rabbit, but over the years I became a real hunter. I could hit a target from 100 steps away, track animals by the sound of the wind and the bend of the grass. My reputation even reached foreign countries. A rich foreigner once hired me as a hunting guide. We traveled across Africa, North America, and Siberia. I hunted lions, buffalo, and bears. The money I earned from that is the only reason I didn't die alone in some ditch as an old man. Now, reborn in my young body, I still had all those skills. Feeding 3 women would be easy. Qingxue got worried when she saw me heading out. She said the mountains were dangerous, wolves and wild boars. I told her I knew these mountains like the back of my hand. Then she took off a jade pendant from her neck and pressed it into my hand. It was the only thing her mother left her before she died. Her stepmother came after that and ruined her life. She said this pendant kept her going through the worst times, and now she wanted it to keep me safe. I tried to refuse, it was too precious. But she insisted. The other 2 women told me to come back safe, that they would be waiting. For the first time in a long while, someone was waiting for me to come home. I hung the pendant around my neck and headed for the mountains. The cold was brutal. My breath came out white and my fingers went stiff. But after walking for a while, I noticed something strange. I was getting warmer, not from walking, but from my chest. I looked down and saw a faint glow through my clothes. I pulled out the jade pendant. It was hot, and green light was pouring out of it, getting brighter and brighter. Before I could react, the light swallowed me whole. When I opened my eyes, I was standing in a wide, open field of green grass under a blue sky. Nearby, a crystal-clear spring flowed with a faint glow. There were neat plots of farmland, a fenced area that looked like it was meant for raising animals, and right in the middle, a 2-story house with white walls and red tiles, just like the fancy houses I had seen in the city in my old life. I pinched myself. It hurt. This was real. I had read about things like this in novels before. A magical space hidden inside an object. I didn't just get reborn, I got a cheat on top of it. And the secret was inside the jade pendant Qingxue gave me. But she had worn it for years, and nothing ever happened. I had it for less than an hour, and it activated. Maybe it was because I was a reborn person. I stopped trying to figure out how the space worked and just explored it. I knelt by the glowing spring and drank a handful of water. The moment it went down my throat, I felt it rush through my whole body. It was like every bit of tiredness and soreness I ever had was being washed away. My blood moved faster, my muscles felt stronger, even my skin looked better. I felt reborn all over again. I checked out the villa next. Inside there was a leather sofa, a big TV, a kitchen with a stove and fridge, all empty though. The space gave me the place, but I had to fill it myself. Upstairs had 2 bedrooms with soft beds and new blankets. I lay down and almost didn't want to get up. Then a voice spoke inside my head. It called itself the spirit of the space. It said it had been sleeping for 1,000 years, waiting for someone whose body matched the space perfectly. Qingxue wasn't the right person, I was. That's why the pendant never activated for her. The spirit asked me to use the space to help people. I thought about all the suffering I saw in my past life. People starving, people dying from disease, and those 3 women buried in the mudslide. I agreed. I promised to do my best. After that, knowledge flooded into my mind. How to enter and leave the space, how crops would grow faster inside, how food stored in the space would stay perfectly fresh. Time inside moved at the same speed as outside. I left the space and found myself back on the mountain path. Now I could enter any time just by thinking about it, even without the pendant. I headed deep into the forest to hunt. Decades of experience kicked in. I moved quietly, red tracks on the ground, and within minutes I shot a fat rabbit right through the head. I stored it in the space instantly, no need to carry anything. Over the next 2 hours I got 3 more rabbits and 2 pheasants. But I wanted something bigger. I found deep hoof prints in the mud, a wild boar, at least 200 or 300 pounds. I tracked it and found it in a clearing, a massive black beast with bristles like steel needles and tusks half a foot long. I circled around to its side, aimed for the soft spot behind its ear, and let the arrow fly. 1 shot, instant kill. I stored the whole thing in the space. Without it, I could never have carried a 300-pound boar by myself. I checked my haul. 3 rabbits, 2 pheasants, 1 huge boar. Enough to keep us fed for a long time. I turned to head home. Then I heard rustling behind me. I stopped. This wasn't a small animal. I turned around slowly. Green eyes glowed in the bushes. Then more appeared. 2, 3, 4, 5. Wolves. 5 gray wolves, coming out of the brush and staring right at me. They formed a half circle around me. 5 gray wolves, the leader as tall as my waist. The big one stared me down, growling low. They had probably come for the wild boar and found me instead. Normally, 5 wolves against 1 man with a bow would mean certain death. Wolves hunt together. One distracts you from the front while the others attack from behind. But I had the space. If things got bad, I could just disappear into it. They couldn't follow me there. But before that, I wanted to kill as many as I could. Wolf skin makes excellent winter clothing. 5 pelts would keep the 3 women warm all winter. I backed against a tree and drew my bow fast. I shot the nearest wolf through the neck, dead instantly. Before the others could react, I pulled another arrow and killed the second one. 2 arrows, 2 kills. The alpha howled, and all 3 remaining wolves lunged at me from different angles. Right before they reached me, I thought, enter, and vanished into the space. The wolves slammed into the tree trunk. They sniffed around, completely confused. Their prey had disappeared into thin air. Inside the space, I watched them through a kind of mirror and laughed. I drank some spring water to recover my energy, then came up with a plan. I would pop out, shoot one, and disappear again before they could touch me. It worked perfectly. I came out, killed a 3rd wolf, and vanished again. Then I appeared behind the alpha and shot its leg. While it was down, I put an arrow through its head. The last wolf tried to run. I shot it in the back. All 5 dead. I collected every wolf and stored them in the space. My total haul was now 3 rabbits, 2 pheasants, 1 300-pound boar, and 5 wolves. Incredible. But then I realized a problem. I couldn't bring all of this home. How would I explain 1 man carrying hundreds of pounds of meat back from the mountains? People would think I was some kind of monster. The space had to stay secret, forever. Not even the 3 women could know. In my 80 years of life, I had seen what greed does to people. If word got out about something this powerful, it would bring disaster on all of us. So I only took out 2 rabbits, tied them to my waist, and headed home. Everything else would stay in the space. I would bring things out little by little over time. When I got near the house, I saw all 3 women running toward me. Qingxue had been sitting at the door staring toward the village entrance all afternoon. She looked me up and down, checking for injuries, scolding me for being gone so long. I handed them the 2 rabbits. Their eyes went wide. Ming Sui said even the best hunter in the village was lucky to catch 1 rabbit in a whole day. I brought back 2 fat ones. I shrugged and said I got lucky. But the way all 3 of them looked at me had changed. I could see it in their eyes. They thought they had found something special. Qingxue held those rabbits and her eyes got wet. She told me later that no one had ever been this good to her in her whole life. I told them all to stop being emotional. Let's go home and cook. Back at the house, Qingxue and Ming Tsue skinned and cleaned the rabbits while Waner got the fire going. I decided to braise one rabbit for tonight and make soup with the other for tomorrow. These women were skin and bones. They needed proper food. I cooked it myself. I had spent decades living alone in my past life, so my cooking was decent. I used a little bit of oil my late wife had saved. I had never touched it until now. I fried the rabbit with ginger, garlic, and green onion, added soy sauce for color, then let it simmer. When it was done, the smell filled the whole yard. The women could barely believe it. Ming Tsue said the last time she ate meat was 3 years ago, a chicken but her mother-in-law gave her at a family dinner. Waner said she had never even had that much. They all had tears in their eyes while eating. Waner cried and said it was the best thing she ever tasted. Their hands were shaking. I told them to stop crying. Days like this were just the beginning. I made a promise to take care of them, and I meant it. But the meat smell drifted outside on the evening wind. In a time when most families could barely eat enough grain, the smell of cooking rabbit was impossible to ignore. Villagers started poking their heads out, wondering who was eating meat. My second brother's wife, Lu Tsuehua, happened to walk past on her way to gossip with a neighbor. She smelled it, peeked over my wall, and saw everything. Me eating with 3 women, a big bowl of braised rabbit on the table. Her eyes nearly popped out. She ran straight to the Chun family house to tell my mother. In her head, she was already scheming. She figured that since I was a Chun, anything I hunted belonged to the family. She wanted my mother to come demand the meat. On top of that, she wanted my mother to scold me for living with 3 widows so soon after my wife's death. My mother, Wang Ho Hot, was sitting in her house cracking sunflower seeds when Tsuehua burst in, out of breath, shouting that I had meat, 2 whole rabbits, braised, with soup, and the smell was so good she couldn't walk past it. We were almost done eating when someone kicked my gate open. My mother, Wang Ho Hot, stormed into the yard, hands on her hips, screaming. My second brother's wife Lu Tsuehua was right behind her, grinning like she was watching a show. My mother started yelling, calling me ungrateful, saying I had meat but didn't bring any to her. She called me a white-eyed wolf. Tsuehua piled on, calling the 3 women wild women and shaming me for being with widows so soon after my wife died. She said I was a disgrace to the Chin family name. The 3 women went pale. They didn't dare talk back. They knew if they said a word, they would be called worse names. But I could see the anger and hurt in their eyes. They had done nothing wrong. I put down my chopsticks. In my past life, these women were bullied just like this. Not again. I stood up and told my mother to get out. She was shocked. I had never talked to her like that before. She screamed that she was my mother and I had no right. I looked her straight in the eye and said she didn't deserve to be called my mother. I laid it all out. When the family split up, my 2 brothers got big houses, farmland, and livestock. They even split the iron cooking pot between them. All I got was this broken shack. I worked the field since I was a teenager, and every penny I earned went into the family pocket. When it was time for me to get married, she said there was no money for anything, no bride price, no wedding, not even new clothes. When my wife was dying, coughing up blood, I knelt outside the family house begging for money to save her. She sat there cracking sunflower seeds and told me I was bad luck, that I killed my father and would kill her too. She told me to borrow money somewhere else and stop bothering her. My wife died because of that. Now I catch 2 rabbits and suddenly she smells the meat and comes running, demanding I hand it over as filial duty. Where was her duty to me when I was chewing tree bark to survive? Where was she when my wife was dying? Where was she when I sold my own blood to pay for the funeral? I walked toward her, step by step, and told her straight. From the day my wife died, I no longer had a mother. If she ever came to my door again looking for food or trying to cause trouble, she could forget it. Not a single grain of rice from my house would ever go to the Chin family. My mother screamed that she would go to the village leader and let everyone judge what a terrible son I was. I told her to go ahead. I would be happy to let the whole village hear how she treated me, how she played favorites when splitting the family, how she let my wife die. She backed off from that idea fast. She knew the village already talked about her behind her back. Then Tsuehua jumped in, threatening to tell everyone in the village that I was living with 3 widows. She said nobody would know what kind of shameful things we did at night under the same roof. I just smiled. Go ahead and spread your stories. I have something to share too. She froze. I asked her what she was doing with Wang Matsi in the cornfield last autumn. Her face went white. She denied it, called it lies. But I pushed further. I asked if I should describe the mole on Wang Matsi's body and exactly where it was. She nearly collapsed. The truth was, I hadn't actually seen it myself in this life. But in my past life, they got caught, and it became a huge scandal in the village. I used what I remembered to bluff her. My mother turned on Suehua with cold eyes. She asked why I would know about a mole on Wang Mazi's body. Suehua panicked, dropped to her knees, swore she was innocent. She tried to say I was making it all up to turn them against each other. I offered a simple solution. Go ask the villagers if anyone else saw them together during harvest season. Or just check Wang Mazi for the mole. Suehua blurted out, "Don't ask," before she could stop herself. That was all my mother needed. She remembered how Suehua kept going to the cornfield last autumn, claiming she was picking up leftover cobs. Now it all made sense. My mother exploded at her, called her a shameless woman who put horns on her own husband. Suehua collapsed on the ground, sobbing and begging for mercy. My mother forgot all about Suehua and reached for the bowl of rabbit meat on the table. She said she would just take the meat home. I grabbed the bowl before she could touch it. She yelled that I owed her the meat as her son. I told her there was no meat for her, but if she wanted, I could offer her something else from the toilet. She was shaking with rage, pointing at me, barely able to speak. By now, villagers had gathered around to watch. They whispered among themselves how my mother gave me nothing when the family split, how she refused to help when my wife was sick, and now she smelled meat and came running. Nobody was on her side. My mother heard the villagers whispering about her and couldn't take it. She looked at me and realized I wasn't the same pushover I used to be. She couldn't bully me anymore. She pointed at me, said, "Just you wait," grabbed Suehua, and left. The villagers watched them go with mocking eyes. The three women were stunned. They had never seen anyone stand up to my mother like that. Qingxue worried that I had ruined my relationship with my mother for their sake. Wanner blamed herself, saying none of this would have happened without them. I told them it had nothing to do with them. My mother and I were finished long before tonight. Then Wanner broke down. She threw herself into my arms and cried, saying nobody had ever been this good to her in her whole life. I wiped her tears and told her she just had bad luck before, but from now on she needed to get used to someone treating her well. Mingsue came and hugged me from the side, crying too. Even Qingxue, who was always the strong one, leaned against me quietly. The three of them held on to me in the yard, and for the first time in a long time, I felt what it was like to have people who cared. After a while they let go, all a little embarrassed. We finished dinner and went to bed, but I didn't sleep. I waited until everyone was quiet, then went out to the well in the yard. I took some spirit spring water from my space and poured it into the well. It glowed for a moment, then blended in and disappeared. This way, every time the women drank water, cooked, or washed, they would slowly absorb the spring water's benefits. Their weak bodies would get stronger without them even knowing. I wasn't going to tell anyone about the spring water, too dangerous. The next morning, I got up before dawn and checked my space. The whole wild boar was still there, perfectly fresh. I needed to go to town. We had no salt, no oil, and barely any supplies. I planned to sell some of the boar meat for cash. And there was one more important thing I had to take care of, paying off my debts. When my wife was sick, I borrowed money from several families in the village for medicine. After she died, the funeral cost even more. Altogether, I owed about 100 yuan, a huge amount in this era, more than most families saved in a whole year. In my past life, it took me ages to pay it back. This time, I wanted to settle it quickly. Those people trusted me enough to lend, and I wouldn't forget that. I got up early, washed up, and put on a clean cotton jacket. Since I activated the spirit spring, the cold didn't bother me much anymore. When I walked out, Qingxue was already up, standing in the frost with her thin, patched clothes. Her face was white, her lips purple, her body shaking. I took off my jacket and put it on her. She tried to refuse, but a gust of wind made her shiver so hard she couldn't argue. I told them to use the rabbit skins from yesterday to make gloves and scarves while I was gone. I needed to get to town. She asked where I was going. I just said I had business to take care of and told them to eat the leftover rabbit meat without waiting for me. I caught the ox cart at the village entrance. Old Yang, the driver, charged 2 cents per person. On the ride, he brought up last night's fight with my mother. The whole village already knew. He said my mother was wrong, that everyone could see it. But he also warned me about the gossip. A single man living with 3 widows, people would talk no matter what. He suggested I go to the village chief and register them officially. Maybe say they were hired help. That way there would be an explanation on paper, and the gossip would lose its teeth. It was good advice. I told him I would do it when I got back. The town was small, one main street with a supply store, a grain station, a post office, and a clinic. But I didn't stop there. I walked east to a narrow alley at the edge of town. At the end of that alley was the black market. It was just a tight lane with stalls on both sides selling everything: grain, cloth, ration tickets, seeds, poultry. You could buy anything if you had money, but the risk was real. People got caught regularly. Small offenses meant fines, big ones meant prison. Two big men stood guard at the entrance. One had his arms crossed, the other was smoking. They looked at everyone who came and went with suspicious eyes. When I tried to walk in, one of them put out his hand and stopped me. I paid the entrance fee, 1 dime, and walked into the black market. That was how it worked. The local boss controlled the market, split the money with officials, and in return, everyone inside got a warning if trouble was coming. I found a quiet corner where nobody was looking, pulled the whole wild boar out of my space, threw it over my shoulder, and walked through the market like it was nothing. After drinking the spirit spring water, my strength had grown a lot. 300 pounds felt easy. People stared and whispered as I passed. I found a stall that bought wild game. The owner, a skinny man with a thin mustache, nearly fell over when he saw the boar. He checked the meat, said it was top quality, then ran off to get more buyers since he couldn't afford the whole thing alone. He came back with 4 or 5 others. I told them 1 yuan per pound, no bargaining. Someone complained that regular pork was only 70 cents, but I pointed out that mine didn't require ration tickets, and wild boar tasted 10 times better than farm pork. They could resell it for even more. My one condition: I kept the skin. They agreed and divided up the meat. I walked away with 290 yuan in my pocket. That was a huge amount of money in this era. Next, I needed ration tickets. Without them, you couldn't buy most things even if you had cash. I found a woman selling tickets and bought 50 pounds of grain tickets, 30 feet of cloth tickets, 10 pounds of meat tickets, 2 pounds of oil tickets, and 2 pounds of sugar tickets. The whole lot cost me 27 yuan. Then I asked about seeds. She pointed me to an old man deeper in the market. He had bags of every kind: cabbage, radish, cucumber, beans, peppers, tomatoes, eggplant, plus potato, sweet potato, and corn seed. The prices were cheap. I looked them over carefully. They were good quality, plump and fresh. I started thinking about my space. There was plenty of land in there, and with the spirit spring water, crops would grow fast. I decided to buy a lot. I bought a huge amount of seeds: 5 packs each of cabbage and radish, 3 packs each of cucumber, beans, peppers, tomatoes, and eggplant, plus 30 pounds of potato seed, 30 pounds of sweet potato seed, and 20 pounds of corn seed. The old man couldn't believe it. The whole lot came to 11 yuan. I stored everything in my space when no one was looking. Then I found an old woman in the back of the market selling baby chicks, ducklings, and little rabbits from bamboo cages. I bought 30 chicks, 20 ducklings, and 15 rabbits. She was so shocked she could barely count. I gave her 20 yuan and told her to keep the change. She almost cried and wished me good fortune. I put all the animals into my space. They landed on the green grass, looked around confused for a second, then started running around happily. The space would make them grow fast. Soon the chickens and ducks would lay eggs, and the rabbits would breed like crazy. I would have a steady supply of meat and eggs. After that, I went to the official supply store and used my ration tickets to buy salt, cooking oil, white sugar, matches, soap, and a few pounds of cotton to make thick blankets. I also bought 3 pieces of colorful cloth, red, blue, and green, for the 3 women to make new clothes. Much better than the patched rags they were wearing. I spent about 20 yuan on all of that. After paying back my 100 yuan in debts, I would still have 110 left. For the first time, our future looked promising. When I got back to the ox cart, I was carrying a big sack over my shoulder and a basket full of goods with the bright cloth on top. The village women who had been gossiping on the cart went silent the moment they saw me. They had just been laughing about how I was too poor to feed myself, let alone 3 widows. How I would starve soon and the women would leave me. How I was worse than an animal for not giving meat to my mother. Now they stared at all the things I was carrying, mouths hanging open, unable to say a word. The village women on the cart couldn't stop staring at my things. When the sack opened a little, they saw the wild boar skin, huge and shiny. They spotted the white sugar, the bright cloth, the cotton. Their jaws dropped. These were things they couldn't afford even for New Year. One of them tried to ask where I got the money. I shut her down cold, told them my money was earned honestly and it was none of their business. Old Yang laughed at them from the front of the cart. They had just been mocking me behind my back, and now they couldn't say a word. When the cart reached the village, I saw a big crowd at the entrance, dozens of people. I could hear someone wailing before I even got close. It was my mother. She was sitting on the ground, hair a mess, crying at the top of her lungs, slapping her thighs, putting on a show for the whole village, screaming that her son was an ungrateful animal who kicked her out and wouldn't even give her a bite of meat. She wanted everyone's pity. The village chief, Yang Digui, was standing there looking uncomfortable. He didn't know what to do. When I walked up carrying my big sack and basket full of goods with bright cloth on top, everyone went quiet, including my mother. She stared at everything I was carrying. I set my things down and looked at her. I asked if she was done with her performance. She cried louder, called me an animal, said she didn't want to live anymore. I ignored her and turned to the village chief. I said I had something to discuss. In front of everyone, I laid out the facts. When my wife was dying, I went to my mother for help. She refused to give a single cent. She let my wife die. She didn't even help with the burial. After that, I told her we were done, no more family ties. She agreed to it at the time. The village chief confirmed he remembered. My mother tried to say she had no money back then. I asked her how she found money to hire a midwife when her other daughter-in-law gave birth, or to throw a banquet for her grandson's 1-month celebration. She had money for them, but nothing for my dying wife. I looked around at the crowd and asked everyone. I worked for the Chun family since I was a teenager. I handed over every work point, every penny. Did I owe them anything? People in the crowd started agreeing with me. They remembered how I worked like a servant for the Chun family since I was a kid, all the hard, dirty jobs, all my work points handed over. When I got married, the family didn't pay for anything. I covered the bride price, the wedding, even built the house myself. Whatever debt I might have owed them was paid back many times over. And on top of that, she agreed to cut family ties. The village chief confirmed it. When my mother saw her crying act wasn't working, she switched tactics. She started screaming that I had 3 widows living in my house, that it was shameful and immoral. The crowd got noisy. Some of the gossipy women jumped in to add fuel. My mother wailed louder, saying my wife's bones weren't even cold yet. I waited for her to finish, then spoke calmly to everyone. I said yes, 3 women were staying at my place, but there was nothing improper going on. I explained that they were desperate people, sold off by their families, thrown out by their in-laws. They had once saved my life when I was in danger on the mountain, and they helped with my wife's funeral. I was repaying a debt. Winter was coming. They had no food and no warm clothes. Was I supposed to watch them freeze and starve? I said I had taken them in as hired help and neighbors, giving them food and shelter. Nothing wrong with that. The crowd calmed down. People said it made sense. Repaying kindness was a good thing. I turned to the village chief and formally asked him to approve the arrangement. He thought about it. He knew these 3 women were a problem he hadn't been able to solve. Their families on both sides refused to take them. He could only give them light work during warm months, but winter meant no work points and no wild vegetables. If nobody helped them, something bad would happen. Me volunteering to take care of them actually solved his problem. He approved it and said he would register it officially. My mother panicked and protested. She said 3 women in a man's house was scandalous and would ruin the village's reputation. The chief smiled and asked her a clever question. If she was so concerned and so kind-hearted, why didn't she take the 3 women in herself? She could feed them, clothe them, and house them. That way nobody could gossip. Her face went green. Feed 3 extra mouths? She could barely feed her own family. She stammered and couldn't answer. I twisted the knife. What happened? You just said you were kind-hearted. You're worried about the family name? Then you take care of them. She stood there, red-faced and speechless. The whole crowd laughed at her. The chief wrapped things up. The 3 women would stay with me. It was official, and my mother needed to stop making scenes. She glared at me and hissed that this wasn't over, then left. After everyone left, I handed the village chief 100 yuan, the money he had lent me through the village committee when my wife was sick. He was shocked. He said he always believed in me, and that lending me the money was the right call. He patted my shoulder and told me the country's policies were loosening up, that some places were already allowing private business. He said a smart, hard-working guy like me could make something of himself. He had no idea how right he was. I had lived through the entire reform era in my past life. I knew exactly which industries would boom and which businesses would make fortunes. With my memories and the spirit spring space, getting rich was just a matter of timing. But for now, I needed to build up savings first. Just then, the three women came running toward us, out of breath and worried. They had heard my mother was causing trouble at the village entrance again. Ming Sue said it was all their fault. I told them to relax. It was handled. My mother had been sent away, and the village chief had officially approved them living with me. They could stay without fear. The chief confirmed it and told them to come to him if they had any problems. The women nearly cried with gratitude. He waved it off and said to thank me, not him. We headed home. On the way, Qingxue quietly said thank you. I told her again, we're family, stop thanking me. Back at the house, I sat them down for a serious talk. I told Qingxue and Mingzue that they were older, tougher, and had seen more of the world. From now on, if anyone bullied them while I was away, they shouldn't hold back. Hit them right back. I would back them up, and so would the village chief. Mingsue's eyes got red. No one had ever told her she was allowed to fight back. Her whole life, she had been beaten and bullied, first by her mother-in-law, then by everyone else. She had learned to swallow it all. I told Warner she was younger and smaller, so her job was to back up the other two, shout, make noise, create a scene. Teamwork would beat anyone. Warner puffed up her little face and said she didn't want to be protected. She would get stronger and protect all of us someday. I laughed and ruffled her hair. She turned red but didn't pull away. Then I showed them what I bought. I opened the basket and started pulling things out one by one: salt, cooking oil, white sugar. Their eyes went wide. They couldn't believe it. I showed them everything. When I pulled out the white sugar, Qingxue gasped. Mingxue couldn't believe the cotton. Then I took out the 3 pieces of bright cloth, red, blue, and green, and told them each to pick one and make themselves new clothes. Warner's eyes went red. She said it was too expensive, that they didn't deserve it. I pushed the cloth into her arms and said they were my people now, and I wanted them to look nice. They all blushed at that. A few days ago, they had offered themselves to me out of desperation. But now, after seeing how I treated them, protecting them, feeding them, never asking for anything, something had changed. If I ever did want them, it would no longer be out of duty or survival. It would be willing, truly willing. Finally, I opened the big sack and showed them the wild boar skin. They were stunned. I told them I had killed a boar in the mountains yesterday, hidden the body, then sold the meat in town today, and kept the skin for making warm coats. The story made sense. Nobody would question a man selling meat to pay off debts. They were shocked again when I told them I had already repaid the 100 yuan I owed the village chief. Just like that, the biggest debt was gone. I told them more good days were coming. Qingxue straightened up and promised they would earn their keep. They would handle every chore at home so I could focus on hunting and making money. I told them to divide up the work. Mingxue would sew the cloth into clothes, Warner and Qingxue would make cotton quilts, and Qingxue would turn the boar skin into winter coats. Then Warner ran inside and came back with a pair of gloves and a scarf they had made for me from yesterday's rabbit skins. The stitching was tight and careful. The gloves were lined with soft rabbit fur, and the scarf was thick and fluffy. I put them on. They were warm, but my heart was warmer. In my whole past life, nobody had ever made anything for me. Qingxue put the gloves on my hands herself. Mingxue stood on her toes to wrap the scarf around my neck. Warner stood to the side, face red, whispering that it was her first time making something like this, and she could fix it if it didn't fit right. I told them it was perfect. My voice came out a little rough. They smiled, and then their eyes got wet again. That evening, Mingxue cooked dinner, rabbit soup and sweet potato porridge. Simple but good. Afterward, they shooed me away and did all the cleaning themselves, saying I had been out all day and needed rest. I lay in bed listening to them chatting and laughing softly in the other room. It felt like a real home. Late at night, once they were all asleep, I quietly slipped into the spirit spring space. That night inside the space, I got to work. I planted all the seeds I bought: cabbage, radish, cucumber, beans, peppers, tomatoes, eggplant, potatoes, sweet potatoes, and corn. I knew how to farm. I had done it my whole past life. I dug the rows, planted everything, and ran a channel from the spirit spring to water the fields. The space spirit had told me crops grew much faster in here, so I hoped to have a harvest soon. Then I checked on the animals. In just one day, the chicks, ducklings, and rabbits had already grown noticeably bigger. Their feathers were fluffier and their calls were louder. At this rate, the chickens would be laying eggs before long, and the rabbits would start breeding. I made a mental note to look for fish fry next time I went to town. After that, I spent over 2 hours skinning and cleaning the 5 wolves. It was hard work even for an experienced hunter, but the space automatically broke down waste, which helped a lot. The pelts came out in great condition, better than wild boar skin, warmer and softer. Perfect for making winter coats. I sat down on the villa's leather sofa and thought about my next steps. Hunting was good money, but my homemade bow and arrows had limits. Against big animals or wolf packs, I was taking serious risks. I needed a proper hunting rifle. But in this era, you needed an official hunter's license for that, which required the village chief's approval. The next morning, I went to find the village chief. But when I arrived at his house, a crowd had already gathered. A man from a neighboring village called Wong Family Hollow was standing in the yard with a hunting rifle on his back, telling our village chief that his people owned the mountain hunting grounds. He said our village had no right to hunt there anymore. He mocked us. His village had over a dozen licensed hunters, and ours had 0. The chief was angry but couldn't argue. It was true. Nobody in our village had a hunting license. Wang Defa, the man with the gun, sneered at the crowd and called us a bunch of dirt farmers who had never even touched a rifle. That's when I stepped forward. Who says our village doesn't have a hunter? Everyone turned to look at me. Wang Defa sized me up and laughed. He said I was just a kid who probably couldn't even pull back a bowstring. His men joined in, mocking me. I looked at him calmly and said, "Whether I can hunt or not. Why don't we find out?" Wang Defa laughed and proposed a bet. If I won, he would never bother our village again. If I lost, the entire mountain would belong to Wong Family Hollow, and our people could never hunt there. The villagers were furious. He had a rifle, and I had nothing. Even the village chief told me not to accept. But I said yes. The contest was simple. Shoot sparrows from an old tree. 5 shots each, most kills wins. I pulled out a slingshot, one I had made myself from wood and rubber. Everyone went silent, then burst out laughing. Wang Defa nearly fell over. His men howled that our village had sent a child with a toy to compete against a real hunter. The chief begged me to stop, saying a slingshot couldn't beat a rifle. I told him to let Wang Defa go first. He raised his gun and fired. 1 sparrow dropped. Then 4 more shots rang out, scattering the flock. When the smoke cleared, 3 more sparrows lay on the ground. 5 shots, 4 hits. His men cheered. Our villagers hung their heads. They thought it was over. Wang Defa blew on his gun barrel and mocked me. He asked how many I thought I could get with my toy. 1, or maybe half of 1. I didn't answer. I picked up 5 smooth stones, walked toward the tree, and looked up. Only a few sparrows were left, nervous and ready to fly at any sound. I took a breath, pulled back the slingshot, and fired. The first stone punched through a sparrow's head. Before anyone could react, I fired the second. Then the third, fourth, fifth. 5 stones in 5 seconds. 5 sparrows hit the ground. Every single one dead. 5 shots. 5 kills. With a slingshot. The whole crowd went completely silent. People rubbed their eyes. They couldn't believe what they had just seen. Wang Defa's face went white. He started shaking and screaming that it was impossible, that I must have cheated. I picked up the 5 sparrows and dropped them at Wang Defa's feet. 5 shots, 5 kills, against his 4 out of 5 with a rifle. I asked if he still wanted to call it cheating. He stared at the dead birds and couldn't say a word. His own men admitted they had never seen anyone shoot that fast or that accurately, especially with a slingshot. The crowd erupted. People were cheering, laughing, slapping each other on the back. The village chief had tears in his eyes. He said I brought honor to our village. Wang Defa had no choice but to keep his word. He muttered that he wouldn't bother us again, then turned and ran off with his men. Everyone laughed watching them go. Afterward, the chief pulled me aside and asked where I learned to shoot like that. I kept it vague, said I picked it up from older hunters and practiced on my own. He said he would write me a recommendation letter for the hunter's license exam at the town militia office. The test covered shooting, tracking, wilderness survival, and a written section on hunting regulations. He said with my skills, it shouldn't be a problem. I thanked him and headed home feeling great. Once I had the license, I could get a real rifle. That would make hunting faster, safer, and much more profitable. When I got back, the 3 women had food almost ready. I told them the good news. The chief gave me the paperwork, and I was going to town tomorrow to take the hunter's exam. Warner worried that guns were dangerous. I ruffled her hair and told her a gun would actually make things safer. Then someone called from the gate. It was the village chief's wife, Lu Guifang. She walked in carrying a bamboo basket packed with eggs, 20 or 30 of them. In this era, eggs were precious. Even the chief's family couldn't spare that many easily. I tried to refuse, but she insisted. She said I had earned it by standing up for the village today against Wang Family Hollow. She was truly grateful. Qingxue looked confused and asked me what had happened. She had no idea about the contest. The chief's wife told the three women the whole story, how Wang Defa came with his rifle to bully our village, and how I beat him with a slingshot. 5 shots, 5 sparrow headshots, in 5 seconds. She said the chief told her there wasn't another person in the whole district who could do what I did. The women were stunned. Qingxue covered her mouth in amazement. Mingsue couldn't believe a slingshot beat a rifle. Warner begged me to show her sometime. I turned red and told them it was no big deal. The chief's wife laughed and called me too modest. She left after wishing me luck on tomorrow's exam. After she was gone, Qingxue teased me, saying I ran away from them faster than I ran from wolves. I ducked into the house, embarrassed. Outside, I could hear them talking quietly. I didn't catch every word, but there was a lot of laughing. What I didn't know was that the three of them had just had a very serious conversation. They had all admitted to each other that they had feelings for me, not just gratitude, but real feelings. They said they had admired me even before all this, watching how I treated my sick wife, never giving up on her. They worried about what would happen since there was only one of me and 3 of them. Qingxue came up with a solution. She made them all link pinkies and promise, no matter what happened, they would stay sisters forever. If I chose one of them, the other 2 would give their honest blessing. And if I wanted all 3 of them, they would share. Together, as a family. Mingsue joked and asked if I could handle all 3 of them. Warner, blushing to her ears, whispered that I probably could since I was so strong. Qingxue burst out laughing and called her secretly the boldest of them all. They laughed together until their sides hurt. Inside, I heard them laughing and smiled. The house finally felt like a real home. I had no idea what they had just agreed on. If I had, I think my head would have exploded. I focused on tomorrow instead. Shooting, tracking, wilderness survival, none of it worried me. I just needed to pass that exam and get a rifle. Things were about to get a whole lot better. Tomorrow, back to town. The next morning, Old Yang was waiting at the village entrance with his ox cart. He wouldn't take my money this time. Said I earned a free ride after what I did for the village yesterday. His wife had even sent along some oranges for me. That warmth meant a lot. My real family treated me like garbage, but people like Old Yang and the village chief had quietly looked out for me ever since my wife died. I promised myself that when I made it big, I would repay every one of them. At the town militia compound, 2 armed guards checked my papers and let me in. The training grounds in the back were already full of people, both militia soldiers and civilians here to take the exam. Right away, some young guy in a fancy new suit started mouthing off. Turned out his name was Wang Jianjun, Wang Defa's nephew. He said his uncle hadn't slept all night after losing to me, and now he wanted to settle the score. He bragged that he had been training with guns since he was a kid, and his uncle said his talent surpassed his own. His friends called me a country bumpkin and said I didn't belong here. I didn't bother responding. Actions speak louder. The militia captain, Zhou Taizhu, came out and explained the exam. 3 parts: shooting, tracking, and combat. Pass all 3 to get the license. First up was shooting, 5 bullets at a target 50 meters away. Wang Jianjun went first. 5 shots, for hits, 1 10-ring, 3 9-rings. Solid performance. His people cheered. He looked at me smugly and said my slingshot wouldn't help me here. Others took their turns. Most scored lower than him. Then my name was called. When the captain handed me the rifle, he stared at my face with a strange look, like he recognized me from somewhere but couldn't place it. He shook it off and gave me the gun. It was a Type 56 semi-automatic. I knew this weapon inside and out from my past life. Wang Jianjun sneered that holding a gun and shooting one were 2 different things, that a farmer who had never touched a rifle was going to embarrass himself. I raised the gun, aimed, and fired. 10-ring, the scorer shouted. The crowd went quiet. Wang Jianjun's face twitched. His friends scrambled to reassure him. Just beginner's luck, they said. A first-timer who gets lucky once will fall apart on the next shots. They waited for me to fail. Second shot, 10-ring. Third, 10-ring. Fourth and fifth, both 10-ring. 5 bullets, 5 perfect scores. The scorer's voice was shaking when he announced it. The whole place went crazy. Wang Jianjun turned white. He screamed that I must have cheated, that even veteran hunters couldn't shoot like this. Captain Zhou shut him down hard, saying the target doesn't lie and that he watched me fire every shot himself. He threatened to disqualify Wang Jianjun if he kept complaining. The captain walked over to inspect my target personally. All 5 holes were clustered so tightly in the center they had merged into one ragged opening. He said my accuracy was better than any sharpshooter in his entire unit. He asked if I had been in the army. I said no. He asked who taught me. I said I taught myself. He stared at me like I was some kind of monster. Next was the tracking test. The militia had hidden 3 red cloth targets somewhere in the hills behind the compound. We had 1 hour to find them, at least 2 out of 3 to pass. Everyone rushed into the mountain. Wang Jianjun and his crew sprinted ahead, desperate to beat me. I stayed put. The captain asked if I wasn't worried about falling behind. I said running without knowing where you're going is pointless. I crouched down and studied the ground. Last night's rain had softened the soil. Most footprints were messy, today's examinees. But 3 sets were different. Military boots, even stride, deliberate pace. These were the militia soldiers who hid the targets last night. The 3 trails split in different directions, east, north, and northeast. I followed the eastern trail first. It was the lightest, meaning that soldier had been the most careful. The more careful the hiding, the closer the target usually was. Within 50 meters, I spotted a fresh scratch on a tree trunk, a fingernail mark. At the base, some fallen leaves were flipped the wrong way. I brushed them aside and found a red cloth stuffed in a tree hollow. 5 minutes. The captain was stunned. He said his men spent 2 hours hiding that one. I headed north for the second target. This soldier had been smarter, walked on stone paths that left almost no trace. But I found scraped moss on a rock, a broken fern, a nudged pebble. Near a bush, several branches had fresh, clean breaks, snapped by hand. I pushed the bush apart and found the second red cloth. 3 minutes. The captain and his men just stared at me. One soldier asked if I was part dog. The captain said nothing, but I could see it in his eyes. He knew this wasn't luck or natural talent. This was real, professional tracking skill, the kind that took years to develop. He couldn't understand how a 27-year-old farmer could have it. The third target was the hardest. The soldier who hit it had walked through a stream to erase his footprints. Most people would have lost the trail right there. But I found a faint shoe print in the mud at the stream bank. He had climbed out in a hurry and slipped. I looked in that direction and saw a steep slope with a cliff at the top. That's where it had to be, a place nobody would bother climbing. I scrambled up and found the last red cloth tucked into a crack between the roots of a crooked pine tree. 15 minutes total. All 3 targets found. Captain Zhou couldn't believe it. He said his best soldiers would need at least 30 minutes just for that last one. He pulled me aside and asked again if I had really never served in the military. I told him no and said he could check my records. He had already looked at my file. Born in Green Mountain Village, wife deceased, never enlisted. Clean and simple. He asked where I learned to track like that. I gave him the same answer as before, taught myself. I said my family mistreated me, so I spent years going into the mountains alone to find food. Our mountains were far more complex than this little hill, and if you couldn't track, you starved. He didn't fully believe me, but he could tell I wasn't going to say more. He let it go. I sat on a rock and waited while everyone else was still searching. Half an hour passed. Most people came out empty-handed and got eliminated. Then Wang Jianjun finally appeared, holding 2 red cloths, looking proud of himself. His friends cheered and started mocking me, saying I was probably lost in the woods somewhere. Then they noticed me sitting there with all 3 cloths in my hand. I told them I had been done for 30 minutes. A militia soldier laughed and confirmed it. 15 minutes, 3 targets, while Wang Jianjun spent almost 50 minutes finding 2. Wang Jianjun's face turned dark red. He snarled that the third test, wilderness survival, was the real challenge and that I should wait and see. I glanced at him. A hunter who grew up in the mountains, worried about wilderness survival? Please. Only 7 of us passed the second test. Captain Zhou led us deeper into the mountains for the final round. Wang Jianjun kept looking back at me with a nasty glint in his eyes. He was planning something. Captain Zhou explained the final test, wilderness survival. We had to enter the deep mountains and survive until 6 the next morning. No equipment except a hunting knife and 1 signal flare. We each signed a life or death waiver. 1 man dropped out immediately. 6 of us remained. We entered the forest and split up. I took a path that was harder to walk, but safer. Wild animals avoid tricky terrain. After about 30 minutes, I found a perfect spot. A small valley with 3 mountain walls and only 1 entrance, a steep rock face behind it, flat ground, and a small stream running through. I built a shelter from thick branches and covered it with leaves. I started a fire using my knife and a stone. Then I went to the stream, carved a tree branch into a spear, and caught 3 fish in minutes. I gutted them, skewered them on sticks, and roasted them over the fire. A comfortable camp with food and warmth. This was nothing for someone who spent decades living off the land. What I didn't know yet was that Wang Jianjun had sent one of his lackeys to follow me and scout my location. The spy watched me set up camp and reported back everything. My position, the layout, the single entrance. Wang Jianjun came up with a plan. He knew my campsite was boxed in on 3 sides with only one way out. He ordered his men to catch a wild rabbit, drain its blood, and spread it all around my camp after dark. The blood would attract wild boars or wolves straight to me. With nowhere to run, I could be killed. And since we all signed the waiver, nobody could blame him. He told his men it was just an animal attack, nothing to do with them. Night fell. I leaned against my shelter with my eyes closed, but I wasn't sleeping. After drinking the spirit spring water, my senses were sharper than ever. I heard every sound: wind, insects, the stream, and then footsteps. More than one person creeping toward my camp. They stopped at the edge and started scattering something on the ground. I smelled it right away. Animal blood, fresh and strong. I understood immediately. They had spread animal blood around my camp to attract wild boars or wolves. Clever, but not clever enough. I didn't move until they left. Then I followed them silently through the dark forest. Years of tracking in jungles far worse than this. I once spent 4 days stalking prey in the Amazon, made trailing 2 amateurs effortless. They never knew I was behind them. I heard every word they whispered. They were laughing, saying I was as good as dead. I followed them all the way to their mountain cave, about 2 miles northwest of my camp. I memorized the exact location and terrain. Then I went back and put my own plan together. Instead of cleaning up the blood, I dipped my hands in it and started marking trees and rocks along the path from my camp to their cave. Dozens of marks, forming a clear blood trail leading straight to Wang Jianjun's door. At my camp, I carved a bunch of sharp wooden stakes, dug a shallow pit at the entrance, and set them point up inside, covered with leaves and dirt, a simple trap, just in case. Then I sat by my fire with my knife in hand and waited. Around the middle of the night, I heard them coming. Heavy breathing, hooves on dirt. 3 wild boars, 2 big ones and a smaller one. The lead boar was massive, at least 300 pounds, tusks gleaming in the moonlight. They smelled the blood and moved toward my camp. But they stopped when they saw the fire. Wild boars fear flames. I grabbed a burning branch and threw it at them. They panicked, turned, and ran, straight toward the fresher, stronger blood trail I had laid out. The one leading to Wang Jianjun's cave. I watched them disappear into the darkness and smiled. Across the mountain, Wang Jianjun was sleeping peacefully, dreaming about my death. Then screaming woke him up. His lackey came running, covered in blood, shouting about wild boars. The 3 boars charged out of the forest straight at their cave. Wang Jianjun ran, but slipped on the blood trail, the one I had painted right to his doorstep. He finally understood. I had found their trick and turned it back on them. He scrambled up a tree just before the lead boar slammed into the trunk hard enough to shake the whole thing. He would himself, crying, screaming, snot running down his face. He pulled out his signal flare and fired it into the sky. That red light meant one thing. He was calling for rescue. And calling for rescue meant he failed the exam. He was done. His own scheme destroyed him. After the signal flare went up and I knew the boars were gone, I slipped into my spirit spring space and slept in the villa's soft bed. Best night's sleep I'd had in a while. In the morning I checked on things inside the space. The seeds I planted yesterday had already sprouted, tiny green shoots in neat rows. The chicks, ducks, and rabbits were bigger again. Everything was growing perfectly. I washed my face with spring water, stretched, and headed out to the meeting point. I was the first one there. Captain Zhou looked me over and asked how my night was. I told him I slept well. His eye twitched. He couldn't understand how someone could sleep peacefully in a mountain full of wild animals. He noticed I looked even more rested than before I went in. I told him I ran into 3 wild boars but scared them off with fire and a simple trap. He studied my face. I could tell he suspected there was more to the story, but I kept it calm. Then Wang Jianjun's lackeys stumbled out of the forest, filthy and beaten up. One was limping with a hurt leg. Finally, a group of militia soldiers came out carrying Wang Jianjun on a stretcher. He was in terrible shape, arms slashed open by a boar's tusk, clothes shredded, face white as paper, and a big wet stain on his pants from where he had pissed himself. He had passed out multiple times during the night. The soldiers reported they found him clinging to a tree with 3 wild boars circling below. They had to fire several shots to scare the animals away. They also mentioned finding rabbit blood smeared in a trail leading straight to his cave. That's what brought the boars. Captain Zhou's eyes narrowed. He glanced at me. I kept my face blank. Then Wang Jianjun woke up on the stretcher and started screaming. He pointed at me with a shaking hand, saying I was the one who led the boars to him, that I smeared the blood trail, that I tried to kill him. The captain looked at him coolly and asked one question. Do you have proof? Wang Jianjun couldn't answer. If he told the truth about the blood, he would expose his own plot to murder me. That would mean prison. So he just lay there on the stretcher, mouth opening and closing, saying nothing. Captain Zhou told him to shut up. He was already eliminated the moment he fired that flare. If he kept making accusations without proof, the captain would ban him from ever taking the exam again. They carried him away. He stared at me the whole time with pure hatred in his eyes. I didn't even bother looking back. His lackeys who survived the night came stumbling out too. Wang Ergu fell to his knees crying, swearing he would never go hunting again. When he saw me, he looked at me like I was a demon. I glanced at him and he flinched. They all knew what I had done, but they couldn't say a word. They had started it. They tried to kill me first. At 6:10, the captain called time. 5 of us passed all 3 tests. He handed out the hunter's licenses, little red booklets with our names, photos, and the militia's official stamp. I finally had it. Legal permission to hunt and carry a firearm. He laid out the rules. Guns for hunting only. Stay within approved areas. Don't shoot protected animals. Tomorrow morning, we would come back to pick up our rifles and ammunition. As everyone was leaving, the captain pulled me aside. He asked me quietly if the wild boar situation was my doing. I could tell he had already figured most of it out. I kept it simple. I said those who try to harm others end up harming themselves. He laughed hard at that and said he liked me more and more. Smart, brave, and resourceful. But he warned me too. Wang Jianjun was the type to hold grudges. After what happened, he wouldn't let it go. The captain told me to watch my back. I thanked him and left. Behind me, I could feel the captain still watching. He kept staring at my face with that strange look, like I reminded him of someone important. He couldn't figure out who. He shook his head and told himself it was just a coincidence. I stopped at the supply store to buy a few things to celebrate, then headed to where old Yang was waiting with the ox cart. When I showed him my hunter's license, he slapped his thigh and nearly jumped off the cart. He kept saying I was the first real hunter in Green Mountain Village history. On the ride back, he asked about the exam. I kept it simple, said Wang Jianjun had bad luck with wild boars and failed. Old Yang laughed and said it served him right. When we reached the village, I spotted Qingxue standing under the big tree at the entrance. She had been waiting there since before dawn. She told me she had a nightmare, saw me in the mountains covered in blood, chased by wild boars, and no matter how loud she screamed, I couldn't hear her. She woke up terrified and couldn't go back to sleep. She came out in the freezing cold and waited for hours. When she saw me step off the cart, her eyes lit up. She ran over and checked me for injuries. I showed her the hunter's license. She started crying and threw her arms around me, pressing tight against my chest, whispering that the nightmare had felt so real she thought she would never see me again. Old Yang coughed and told us to remember we were in public. She turned bright red and let go. I grabbed my things and we walked home together. At the gate, Ming Tsue and Warner were waiting too. They looked just as worried. They said Qingxue's nightmare had woken all 3 of them and none of them slept the rest of the night. Once they saw I was fine, they finally relaxed. I handed over the supplies I bought and told them tonight we were celebrating. Getting this license was a big deal. I was now the first officially certified hunter in the village. Things were only going to get better from here. Ming Tsue opened the things I bought, and her eyes lit up. White rabbit candy, sorghum sweets, and crispy sugar treats. Warner squealed with excitement. I told them today was a special day, so we were celebrating. They threw themselves into cooking. Braised rabbit, fried eggs, stir-fried wild greens, and a pot of grain porridge. I sat in the yard like a lazy boss, soaking up the sun and listening to them laugh in the kitchen. It felt like a real home. At the table, I poured everyone a bowl of the wine I bought in town. We raised our bowls and clinked them together, to the hunter's license and to better days ahead. We drank, and the 3 women's faces turned pink and pretty from the alcohol. They competed to pile food in my bowl until it was a small mountain. I told them to stop and eat their own food. After dinner, Warner opened the white rabbit candy and popped one in her mouth. Her eyes went wide. She said she hadn't tasted candy in ages. She unwrapped another and held it to my lips. I took it, sweet and milky. Then someone kicked our gate so hard it flew off its hinges. 5 or 6 young thugs swaggered into the yard. The leader was Zhao Taidan, the village bully. His father was the commune accountant, so he acted like he owned the place. Behind him stood a mean-looking old woman with a cruel face and snake eyes. Warner went white the moment she saw her. It was Sun Ho-Hot, Warner's former mother-in-law. This woman had 3 sons. After Warner's fool husband fell off a cliff and died, Sun Ho-Hot blamed Warner for everything. Called her a husband killer, beat her daily, starved her, made her serve the whole household like a slave. Then the eldest son tried to force himself on Warner one night. She fought back and stabbed him with scissors. Instead of punishing her son, the old woman beat Warner bloody, accused her of seducing her brother-in-law, and threw her out of the house. Now this woman had tracked Warner here. She screamed that Warner was her property, that she had been bought and paid for and had no right to leave. It didn't matter that they had already divorced her. Zhao Taidan looked over the 3 women with hungry eyes. He stared at Warner and licked his lips, making filthy comments about her body, saying he understood why men couldn't resist her. Warner grabbed the corner of my shirt, shaking all over. I looked at the old woman coldly and asked what she wanted. Then Zhao Taidan stepped up, puffing himself up, bragging that his father was the commune accountant. He pulled out a marriage certificate, Warner's name and his name, with Sun Ho-Hot's thumbprint on it. He said he paid 20 yuan and Warner now belonged to him. He was here to collect his wife. Warner cried out that they had no right. They already divorced her. She had nothing to do with the Zhang family anymore. Sun Ho-Hot raised her hand to slap Warner. I caught her wrist before it landed. I told them the truth. They threw Warner out. The moment they did that, she stopped being theirs. She was my person now. Nobody was going to touch her. If they wanted to report me to the commune, go ahead. I would love to see how the authorities handle the case of human trafficking disguised as marriage. This was a socialist country, not a slave market. I flung the old woman's arm away. She stumbled back. Zhao Taidan didn't care about logic. He ordered his thugs to grab Warner by force. 5 or 6 of them charged at us. I kicked the first one so hard he flew into the wall. The second threw a punch. I dodged and smashed his face. Blood everywhere. The third swung a stool at me. I caught it, yanked him forward, and kicked him in the stomach. He went flying. The last 2 begged me to stop. They ran behind Zhao Taidan, too scared to breathe. Zhao Taidan tried hiding behind his father's name, threatening me with consequences. Before he finished talking, I punched him in the gut. He folded in half. I grabbed his hair, pulled his head down, and drove my knee into his face. His nose broke with a crack. Blood poured out. I stepped on his chest and told him to try screaming one more time. He went dead quiet. I laid down the rules. First, Warner was mine, and if he ever came near her again, I would break his legs. He nodded frantically. Second, he kicked my door off its hinges, so he owed me 10 yuan for repairs. He whined that the door wasn't worth that much. I raised my foot toward his face. He dug the money out of his pocket instantly. I took the cash and told him to get lost. He scrambled up and ran, blood pouring from his broken nose. His men limped after him. Sun Ho-Hot was white as a sheet. She threw out one last empty threat and ran too. Warner stood frozen, trembling, not from fear anymore, but from shock. The woman who had terrorized her for years, the bully nobody in the village dared to cross. I had crushed them all in under a minute. She looked at my back with tears running down her face. Warner threw herself into my arms, sobbing, saying it was all her fault. I wiped her tears and told her she was family now, and when family gets bullied, I fight back, even if it's against the king himself. Qingxua warned me that Zhao Taidan wouldn't let this go. His father Zhao Yukai was the commune accountant and had real power around here. Ming Sui worried that Sun Ho-Hot would spread lies everywhere. I told them not to be afraid. Buying and selling people was illegal under the new system. If anyone should be scared, it was them. But I knew I needed to handle this properly. I went to the village chief's house. He was chopping firewood in his yard. I showed him my hunter's license first. He was thrilled, said he would give me a reward from the production team. Then I told him what happened with Zhao Taidan and Sun Ho-Hot. He was furious. He called it human trafficking and said it was a serious crime. Sun Ho-Hot had already kicked Warner out with divorce papers. She had zero right to sell her to anyone. But then his face fell. He told me the real problem. Zhao Yukai wasn't just a commune accountant. He had a cousin named Qian Dahai who was a deputy bureau chief at the county level, in charge of public security. That was why the Zhao family had been untouchable for years. People who tried to report them got punished instead. Eventually, everyone stopped trying. He asked me what I planned to do. He was worried I would do something rash. I thought for a moment, and then I remembered Captain Zhou Taizhu. He was a military man. The local government had no authority over the army. He was clearly a man of principle, and he had taken a liking to me during the exam. The country was in the middle of a crackdown on corruption and lawlessness. If the Zhao family's crimes were brought to someone in the military system, no county-level cousin could protect them. The chief's eyes lit up. He said going through the military was smart. Zhou Taizhu was a tough, honest soldier, and if he got involved, even the biggest local connections wouldn't matter. We agreed on the plan. Tomorrow I was going to town to pick up my rifle. While I was there, I would tell Captain Zhou everything about the Zhao family. The village chief warned me that Captain Zhou might not want to get involved. He had a promising career ahead and might not want to make enemies with local officials. I told him I understood. I would just present the facts and let Zhou decide for himself. Before the chief could finish talking, we heard shouting outside his gate. Someone was yelling my name, telling me to come out. It was Zhao Yukai, Zhao Tiedon's father, the commune accountant. The chief grabbed my arm and told me to slip out the back door while he handled it. I refused. Running away and leaving him to deal with my problem wasn't who I was. I walked out the front gate. Zhao Tiedon stood behind his father with his nose wrapped in bandages. The old man was about 50, wearing polished shoes and a slick-back hairstyle, eyes sharp and cold. He jabbed his finger into my chest and demanded to know how I planned to settle this. I grabbed his finger and pushed it away. I told him his son came to my house with thugs to kidnap a woman using a fake marriage certificate. In the old days, that was called bride snatching. Under socialist law, it was human trafficking. I asked if he wanted me to look up how many years that carried. He screamed that it was a legitimate marriage. The old woman took money and signed. I pointed out that Sun Ho-Hot had already divorced Warner from the family. She had no legal connection to Warner anymore. One stranger selling another stranger to his son wasn't a marriage, it was a crime. The chief stepped in. He told Zhao Yukai that everyone knew about the things he and his son had done over the years. Then he dropped the real warning. He mentioned that I had just earned my hunter's license, that tomorrow I would be picking up a rifle, and that the whole village watched me hit 5 sparrows in the head with a slingshot. He paused and said, very calmly, that a man who walks dark roads too often eventually meets something dangerous. Zhao Yotsai's face changed. I could see the picture forming in his head, me with a hunting rifle, a man who never misses. Cold sweat appeared on his forehead. He tried to act tough, but his voice wavered. He pointed at me, said this wasn't over, then grabbed his son and left. Zhao Tiedon complained, and his father slapped him across the face and told him to shut up. After they were gone, the chief let out a long breath. He told me we had bought some time, but Zhao Yukai held grudges. He wouldn't let this go. I needed to act fast. Tomorrow when I went to pick up my rifle, I had to talk to Captain Zhou before the Zhao family made their next move. The next morning, I went to the militia compound to pick up my rifle. When I walked in, a soldier recognized my name immediately. Word had spread about my perfect score at the shooting range. He pointed me to Captain Zhou at the supply warehouse. Zhou greeted me warmly, but kept staring at my face in a strange way. When I asked if something was wrong, he laughed it off and said I just looked sharp. But I could tell something was on his mind. Then, as we walked to the warehouse, he suddenly asked me what my father's name was. The question caught me off guard. I was quiet for a moment, then told him the truth, something I had kept buried for a long time. I'm not a real member of the Qin family. Wang Ho-Hot is not my birth mother. I was picked up, found somewhere, brought home as a baby to be raised as free labor for the Qin family. That explained everything. Why she treated her other 2 sons like princes and me like a dog. Why I got nothing when the family split. Why she let my wife die without lifting a finger. I found out by accident. Once when I was very young, I had a terrible fever and was barely conscious. I overheard Wang Ho-Hot telling my sister-in-law that she had picked up some abandoned baby, a wild seed, who was tough enough not to freeze to death on the roadside. She said raising me was just about getting a worker for the family. At the time I thought it was a fever dream, but in my past life, I later confirmed it was all true. I told Captain Zhou I had no idea who my real parents were. I never had the money or connections to search. China was too big, and I was too poor. But this life was different. I was reborn with decades of knowledge. I had the spirit spring space, and I was only 27. My real parents might still be alive. Whether they abandoned me or I was stolen, I wanted to find them. I wanted to see their faces. I wanted to ask what happened. But finding them would take money, connections, and resources. So the plan was simple. Get rich first, then search. What I didn't know was what was happening inside Captain Joe's head. He had been up all night comparing my face to an old photograph, a group photo of military officers. The man standing in the center was a high-ranking general, still active in the military, one of the most respected figures in the armed forces. And I apparently looked exactly like a younger version of him. There was a long-standing rumor in the military that this general had lost a son over 20 years ago, a baby who disappeared shortly after birth, possibly stolen by traffickers. The general had searched half the province for years and never found the child. His wife fell gravely ill from the grief and never fully recovered. Now Zhou was staring at me, a man who wasn't part of the Chun family by blood, who had been found as an abandoned baby around the same time, in roughly the same region, and who looked like a carbon copy of that general. Captain Zhou was lost in thought. Everything was lining up in his head, the timing, the face, the fact that I wasn't born into the Chun family. He looked at me like he was seeing a ghost, but he pulled himself together and led me into the weapons warehouse. He handed me a brand new double-barrel shotgun, glossy black metal, smooth wooden stock. He said it was this year's newest model, originally reserved for the best-performing militia soldier, but he thought I deserved it more. I was surprised by the generosity and thanked him. The gun felt perfect in my hands. I broke it open, checked the chamber, tested the trigger, shouldered it, and aimed, all from muscle memory built over a lifetime. Zhou watched every move with sharp eyes. He noticed my inspection technique was identical to a trained soldier's. I told him I had borrowed guns before to practice, since I always planned to be a hunter. He accepted that, though I could tell he wasn't fully convinced. He gave me 50 rounds per month, with strict logging rules. Every bullet accounted for, every kill recorded. He handed me the official receipt with the gun's serial number and his signature. I slung the rifle over my shoulder. From today, I was a real hunter with a real weapon. Then I got serious. I closed the warehouse door partway and told Zhou I wanted to report someone, Zhao Yukai, the commune accountant, and his son Zhao Taidan. I told him everything that happened yesterday. His face darkened as he listened. But I told him reporting just the kidnapping attempt wouldn't be enough. Zhao Yukai had connections. He would make it disappear, and I would be the one punished. I wanted to bring down the whole operation. Not just the son, not just the father, but also their protector, Qian Dehai, the deputy bureau chief at the county level who ran public security. Zhou's eyes went wide. I explained that Qian Dehai was Zhao Youcai's cousin, and he was the reason nobody could touch the Zhao family. Years of land grabbing, wage theft, and bullying, every complaint got buried. People who reported them got punished instead. That was why I came to the military instead of going through local channels. The army didn't answer to county officials. Zhou understood immediately. So you came to me because the local route is a dead end, and you want to go through the military. I nodded and told Captain Zhou I came to him because he was military, outside the reach of county officials. And because I could see he was a man of principle. He was moved, but he cooled down quickly. He said even if he wanted to help, the militia's job was local security and military support, not civilian disputes. He needed a legitimate reason to get involved. And most importantly, he needed evidence. Without proof, nothing would happen. I smiled. That was exactly what I wanted to hear. I asked him, what if I could get Zhao Youcai's secret account book? He froze. I explained my reasoning. Zhao Yukai had been the commune accountant for over a decade, handling all the money, grain, and supplies. His family lived far beyond what an accountant's salary could support. A big brick house, leather shoes, boxed cigarettes, a bicycle. His son threw around 20 yuan like it was nothing. Every holiday, the Zhao family sent crates of gifts to the county. The money had to come from somewhere. Corrupt officials always keep 2 sets of books, I told him. One clean version for inspections, and one private ledger recording every bribe given and received. That secret book was Zhao Youcai's insurance policy, proof he could use against his protector Qian Dehai if they ever turned on each other. So the book definitely existed. Zhou went quiet for a long time. Everything I said made sense to him. What he didn't know was how I really knew all this. In my past life, Zhao Yukai kept stealing for another decade before he finally fell. It wasn't a whistleblower who brought him down. It was a falling out with Qian Dehai. They turned on each other. The noise reached a provincial inspection team, and both of them went to prison. It was the biggest scandal the county had ever seen. And I remembered one crucial detail from that case. The secret account book was found buried half a meter underground, beneath the pig trough in Zhao Yotsai's backyard pigsty. It was wrapped in 3 layers of oilcloth, sealed in an iron box coated with waterproofing oil, hidden under the trough with pig feed and weeds piled on top. Nobody would ever think to look there. In my past life, that book wasn't discovered until the 90s. By then, countless families had been ruined. But in this life, I already knew where it was. The only problem was getting it out. Zhao's house was nearby, with a walled yard and the pigsty in the back. During the day, people were always around. I would have to go at night, and only when the whole family was away from home. Zhou asked me straight, how confident was I about getting that secret ledger? I thought for a moment. I knew where it was buried, but I hadn't scouted Zhao's property yet in this life. Wall height, guard dogs, exact layout. Details might differ from what I remembered. So I held up my fingers and said 70 to 80%. Zhou's eyes went wide. In military terms, 70% is enough to launch an operation. He could tell I wasn't bluffing. He made me a promise. If I delivered the ledger, he would handle everything. He would bypass the county entirely and send it through military channels straight to the military district. From there, they would coordinate with the Provincial Disciplinary Commission, a joint investigation that nobody at the county level could block, not even Qian Dahai. But he warned me to be extremely careful. Zhao Yukai had eyes everywhere after years of running the area. If I tipped him off, the first thing he would do was destroy the evidence. And until this was done, nobody else could know about our arrangement. Not a single person. I agreed, took my new rifle, and left. What I didn't know was what Zhou did after I walked out. He went back to his room and sat there for a long time, wrestling with himself. He kept thinking about my face and that old military photograph. He finally made a decision. He wrote a careful, respectful letter to a high-ranking general in the capital, the man he believed might be my real father. He described what he had observed without making any firm claims, leaving room for the general to judge for himself. If he was wrong, he would accept whatever punishment came. But if he was right and said nothing, he would never forgive himself. The general had been searching for his lost son for 27 years. Zhou sealed the letter with wax, stamped it, and sent it by urgent military mail straight to the capital. Meanwhile, on the ox cart heading home, I was planning my next move. The ledger was supposedly buried under the pig trough in Zhao's backyard, half a meter deep, wrapped in oilcloth, sealed in a waterproofed iron box. That information came from Zhao's wife's confession in my past life. But that was in the 90s, 10 years from now. Had he already hidden it there in 1980? Had he used a different spot before? I couldn't be sure. I needed to scout the property first before making my move. On the ride home, Old Yang noticed I looked distracted and guessed I was thinking about the Zhao family. I didn't deny it. Instead, I asked him what he knew about them. He had plenty to say. He told me how Zhao Yukai got his accountant job in the first place, pure corruption. His cousin Qian Dahai had just become deputy bureau chief, and Zhao bribed his way into the position despite barely having a primary school education. After that, the Zhao family became untouchable. Zhao controlled the commune's money. Qian Dahai covered for him from above, and Zhao tied in ran a gang of thugs below. Old Yang told me about a man named Li Dashuan whose family had owned a piece of land for generations. Zhao Yukai wanted it for his son's new house. When Li refused to sell, Zhao doctored the books to show Li owed 200 yuan in commune fees. Li couldn't pay, so he lost the land. His family was forced into the mountains. His elderly mother died that winter from the shock. Old Yang's eyes went red telling the story. Then I asked about Zhao's habits. Old Yang said Zhao had 2 vices, drinking and gambling. Every 2 or 3 days, he went to an underground gambling den in the next village. It looked like a tea house on the outside, but had secret rooms in the back for card games and dice. Zhao always stayed past midnight, sometimes until dawn. The gambling operation was protected by Qian Dahai, with a deputy chief of police backing it. Nobody dared say a word. This was perfect. An illegal gambling den was another crime I could add to the pile. The secret ledger plus the gambling ring. That would be more than enough to bring them all down. I asked about Zhao Tiedan's habits too. Old Yang laughed bitterly. The kid was a complete waste, drinking, gambling, chasing women. He spent most nights either drunk or sleeping at some widow's house in a neighboring village. Sometimes he didn't come home for days. His mother couldn't control him and didn't bother trying since the family had plenty of stolen money to burn. I filed everything away. The father gambled late into the night every few days. The son often slept elsewhere. That meant there would be nights when the house was nearly empty. That was my window. I asked Old Young one more thing. Did the Zhao family have a dog? He said yes. One old yellow dog that mostly slept by the front gate and never went to the backyard. Good to know. Back home, the women had already replaced the broken door. When they saw the rifle on my shoulder, Warner ran over with wide eyes and asked if she could touch it. I let her, reminding her never to point it at anyone. Ming Sui said it was the most impressive gun she had ever seen. Qingxue asked about the Zhao situation. I told them I was handling it, and they didn't need to worry. I gave them instructions for the coming days. Zhao Tian's broken nose would keep him away for at least 2 weeks. His father had backed down in front of the village chief and wouldn't come knocking while I had a rifle. But just in case, I told Qingxue and Ming Sui to fight back if anyone showed up. If they couldn't handle it, run to the chief's house. Warner promised she wouldn't freeze up like last time. I told them I would be going out at night sometimes and might come back late. Don't wait up. Don't ask where I went or what I did. The less they knew, the safer they were. Qingxue understood. She just asked me to come home safe. Over the next 3 days, I hunted during the day with my bow and arrows, saving the rifle and its limited ammunition for emergencies. Bullets were precious, 50 per month, and every one had to be logged. For rabbits and pheasants, arrows worked just as well. I bagged dozens of small game over those 3 days and stored everything in the space. The stockpile was growing into a small mountain of meat I could sell at the black market later. The rifle stayed on my shoulder as insurance. If a boar or wolf pack appeared, one shot would handle it. The bow was for earning money. The gun was for staying alive. Each evening I ate dinner with the women, waited for dark, then slipped out to scout Zhao Youcai's property. After 3 nights of watching, I had the Zhao family's routine figured out. On the 4th night, I hid inside my space and waited near their house. Just after 7, the front door opened. Zhao Youcai and Zhao Taidan walked out. Taidan still had bandages on his swollen face from where I broke his nose. I heard them talking. Zhao Youcai told his son to be patient. He would ask Qian Dehai to find some excuse to confiscate my rifle first, then they would deal with me slowly. They climbed on their bicycles and rode off to the gambling den. I kept waiting. Then something unexpected happened. Around 9 o'clock, Li Zuoyan, Zhao's wife, came out, fed the dog, then went back inside and changed into nicer clothes. She fixed her hair and put something on her face. A woman doesn't dress up alone at night for no reason. Sure enough, she cracked open the side door and a man slipped in, short, chubby, with a limp. She locked the door behind him. They whispered, grabbed each other, and disappeared into the bedroom. The lights went off. Zhao Youcai's wife had a lover. The father and son were out gambling while she was cheating at home. What a family. But for me, this was perfect. She would be completely distracted. A thunderstorm wouldn't get her attention right now. I came out of the space. First I dealt with the dog. I tossed a meatball laced with crushed datura seeds over the wall. The old dog sniffed it once and swallowed it whole. Within a minute, it was out cold. I scaled the back wall using a folded wolf skin to cover the broken glass on top. I dropped into the yard without a sound. From the main house I could hear the wife and her visitor. They weren't paying attention to anything. I moved to the pigsty. 2 fat pigs were sleeping inside. One woke up and grunted, so I tossed half a sweet potato from my space. Both pigs started fighting over it and forgot about me completely. I crouched by the pig trough, a heavy stone basin, 70 or 80 pounds. Thanks to the spring water, I was strong enough to slide it aside quietly. Underneath was flat dirt that looked no different from the ground around it. I pulled a shovel from my space and started digging. Slow, quiet, controlled. One scoop after another. About half a meter down, my shovel hit something hard. My whole body went electric. It was there. I put down the shovel and dug with my bare hands. An iron box appeared, about a foot square, coated in dark waterproofing oil, nearly invisible against the soil. I pulled it out, wiped it clean, and opened it. Inside, wrapped in 3 layers of oilcloth, was a thick account book. I flipped to the first page. July 1973, diverted 200 yuan from public road repair funds to private account. A few pages later, January 1975, gifts to cousin Qian Dehai. Liquor, cigarettes, and 300 yuan cash, page after page, year after year. I didn't have time to read it all there. I stored the box and ledger in my space, refilled the hole, packed the dirt tight, put the pig trough back exactly where it was, and checked everything twice. No trace left. The whole operation took less than 15 minutes. In the main house, the wife and her lover were still going at it. The dog was still unconscious. Nobody knew a thing. Back home, I slipped into my space and read the entire ledger in the villa's study. What I found was bigger than I expected. This wasn't just one corrupt accountant. It was a network stretching from the commune all the way up to the county level. Zhao Yukai was the bottom. Qian Dehai was the middle. And above him, even a deputy county chief was involved. No wonder they were untouchable. This ledger could blow up half the county's government. But that worked in our favor. The timing was perfect. 1980, the start of the national crackdown on corruption. The authorities above were hungry for examples. This case was a gift-wrapped present. The next morning, I went straight to Captain Zhou's office. When I walked in, he could tell from my face. He closed the door, pulled the curtain, and told me to talk. I pulled out the ledger and handed it to him. He opened it. By the first page, his expression changed. By the fifth page, his hands were shaking. He looked up at me with wide eyes and asked where I got it. I told him, Zhao's pigsty, buried under the pig trough. I had staked out the house and dug it up while the family was away. He stared at me for 10 full seconds. Then he grabbed my shoulders. "You're one hell of a guy." He said if this went through normal local channels, not only would the case be buried, I would disappear. But through the military route, straight to the top, bypassing everyone in the county, this was going to bring them all down. Zhou looked me in the eye and said I was playing with fire. I told him no, I was setting the fire, and the ones getting burned were them. He laughed and slapped my shoulder. He said Zhao Yukai had terrorized people for years, and this ledger was the blade he had been waiting for. He wrapped the book carefully and gave me strict orders. Stay away from town. Stay away from Zhao's house. Don't talk to anyone about this. Just go hunt in the mountains like normal. Keep the rifle loaded and close. He would handle everything from here through military channels. I understood. The less visible I was, the better. Meanwhile, that same morning, Zhao Yukai came home from the gambling den in a terrible mood after losing all night. As he approached his house, he noticed something. A faint scuff mark on the top of his back wall. Fresh. It hadn't been there yesterday. Most people wouldn't notice. But Zhao Yukai knew what was buried in his backyard. His face went white. He threw his bicycle down and sprinted to the pigsty. He shoved the pig trough aside and started digging like a madman. His son chased after him, terrified, asking what was wrong. At half a meter deep, nothing. The iron box was gone. The ledger was gone. Zhao Yukai let out a scream that echoed across the whole compound. He grabbed his son by the collar, eyes bloodshot, and howled that his account book had been stolen. Then he caught himself. The secret of that book could never be shared with anyone, not even his own son. He let go. His mind raced. He had guarded this secret for 8 years. Nobody knew it existed. He always handled the box alone, deep at night, with every door locked. How could anyone have found it? Then it hit him. His wife. She was home alone last night. If someone climbed the wall, she should have heard something. Unless she was too distracted to notice. Unless she was doing something else. He stormed into the kitchen and grabbed Li Zuilian by the arm. He demanded to know what she was doing last night while he was gone. Her face drained of color. She thought he had found out about her lover. She stammered that she was just sleeping. Her eyes darted everywhere except his face. Zhao Yukai had spent a decade reading liars in the commune. He could see right through her. He slapped her hard across the face and told her to talk. While I was handling things on my end, Zhao Yotsai's world was falling apart at home. He beat his wife, demanding to know what happened last night. She thought he had discovered her affair and broke down completely. She confessed everything. She had been sleeping with a man from the next village for 6 months. Every time Zhao went gambling, the man snuck in through the side door. Zhao Yukai had come home to discover his secret ledger was stolen. Now he learned his wife had been cheating on him for half a year. The double blow was too much. His face went purple. He started foaming at the mouth and collapsed backward, cracking his head on the doorstep. He passed out cold. His son ran screaming for the village doctor. Back at my house, the 3 women met me at the gate. I told them it was done. I had handed the evidence to someone reliable, and results would come soon. I gave no details. The less they knew, the safer they were. Just live normally and wait. Warner started crying again, blaming herself for everything. She said if it weren't for her, we never would have crossed the Zhao family. She called herself a curse. I walked over and lifted her chin so she was looking at me. I told her this had nothing to do with her. Zhao Taidan was the kind of trash who would prey on any woman. Sun Ho Hot was a criminal who sold people. I fought them because they deserved it. My choice, not her fault. I wiped her tears with my thumb and told her she was my person. Anyone who messed with her would answer to me. That was just how I was. I protected what was mine. She froze, cheeks turning red, and repeated softly, I'm your person. Then she blushed all the way down to her neck. Qingxue and Mingxue couldn't help laughing at her. I ruffled her hair and told her to never call herself a curse again. She was family. She nodded hard, tears still wet on her face, but smiling now. And somewhere behind those eyes, I could tell she had made some kind of quiet decision about something. That night, I lay on the bed thinking about Zhao Yukai. If he had discovered the ledger was gone, he must be losing his mind right now. But he had no reason to suspect me. A hunter wouldn't know about a commune accountant's secret books. Still, I needed to stay alert. I was starting to drift off when I heard my door creak open. Someone slipped inside, moving as quietly as possible. I didn't open my eyes. My senses told me it wasn't a threat. The person smelled of soap, freshly washed. No thief bathes before a robbery. The blanket lifted. A warm, trembling body slid in next to me. A cold, soft hand touched my arm. I opened my eyes. In the pale moonlight, I saw Wanner's face inches from mine. She was wearing only a thin inner garment, shaking like a leaf, eyes full of fear and courage at the same time. She told me she had made up her mind. She said her life already belonged to me. She knew she was just a widow who had been sold and traded her whole life, and she had nothing to offer. But her heart was mine. Even if I didn't want her, even if I didn't take responsibility, she was willing. Then she leaned up and kissed the corner of my mouth, soft as a butterfly's wing. Every drop of blood in my body caught fire. I was 27, had been alone my whole life, both lives, and the spirit spring water had made me stronger than I had ever been. A beautiful woman had just climbed into my bed and kissed me. If I could stay calm after that, I wouldn't be human. But I didn't rush. I looked at her carefully. The well water mixed with spirit spring had changed her. Her skin was now smooth and glowing, her features delicate and alive. She was shaking but refusing to back down. I told her I don't do things without taking responsibility. If she came into my bed, she wasn't leaving. Her eyes flew open. Before she could say another word, I kissed her. Not gently this time. In the next room, Qingxue and Mingxue were both awake. They had heard the door. They knew exactly what was happening. Mingxue sat up and said she couldn't take it anymore. She wanted to go too. Qingxue tried to scold her, but her own face was burning red. Mingxue reminded her of their promise. They had agreed to share. No jealousy, no regrets. Mingxue got up and left the room. Qingxue sat alone on the bed, heart pounding, listening to the faint sounds from my room. She whispered to herself that she couldn't stand it either. Qingxue couldn't stay in bed either. She put on her shoes and went outside. She found Mingxue already standing by my door in the cold. They could hear Wanner inside. The two of them stood there in the freezing night, unable to leave, unable to go in. After a long time, Qingxue finally pulled Mingxue away. She said Wanner had suffered more than any of them and deserved this moment. Their turn would come. They went back to bed but couldn't sleep. The next morning, I woke up with Wanner curled against my chest, still sleeping peacefully. I looked down and saw something that stopped me cold, a spot of red on the sheets. She had been a virgin. It hit me all at once. She had been married to a fool who never touched her. She went through years of abuse from her mother-in-law, was thrown out, nearly sold off, and through all of it, she had never been with anyone. She gave her first time to me, and she hadn't told me because she was afraid I would stop if I knew. When she woke up, shy and soft-voiced, I asked her why she didn't say anything. She buried her face in my chest and whispered that she didn't want me to hesitate. She had waited her whole life for someone worth giving herself to. Even if it was only once, she wouldn't regret it. I kissed her forehead and told her it wasn't going to be just once. It was for life. I would take responsibility for her. She cried, but she was smiling. She held on to me like I was everything she had in the world. Wanner fell back asleep almost immediately. I carefully tucked the blanket around her and stepped outside into the cold morning air. I needed to clear my head. There was still Zhao Yukai to worry about, and my own origins to figure out. Then the door of the other room opened. Qingxue and Mingxue came out, both with dark circles under their eyes. Mingxue said casually that someone had kept them up all night. I turned red. They told me not to feel guilty. They said the three of them had made a pact long ago. Whoever was first, the other two wouldn't be jealous. Mingxue stepped forward and kissed me hard on the lips. Then Qingxue kissed my cheek. Both said their first times would be for me, and only me. Then they ran back inside, faces burning. I stood in the yard, completely overwhelmed. I ended up jumping into the ice-cold spirit spring inside my space just to cool down. Around midday, while the women were still resting, I heard yelling at the gate. It was Wang Hohat, my so-called mother, with my two older brothers behind her. She was screaming that I had brought disaster on the Chen family by fighting the Zhao family. She demanded I go beg for forgiveness, kowtow to Zhao Yukai, and make things right before the whole family suffered. My eldest brother said I should apologize before Zhao crushed us all. My second brother wouldn't even look at me. I laughed. I reminded them we had already cut family ties. My business had nothing to do with them. Even if I killed the entire Zhao household, it wouldn't touch the Chen family. I told Wang Hohat that if she came to my door again making noise, she would learn what real consequences looked like. She tried pulling the mother card again. That's when I dropped the bomb. You know exactly whether or not you actually gave birth to me. Her face froze. Panic flashed in her eyes. She had never told anyone I was adopted, picked up off the road as a baby. She thought the secret was hers alone. She stared at me, voice shaking. What? What do you mean by that? Wang Hohat's voice wavered after what I said. I didn't explain further, just gave her a look that made her skin crawl. She knew exactly what I meant. My eldest brother, Chen Dashan, lost his temper. He charged at me with his fist raised, screaming that he would teach me a lesson like the old days. I sidestepped, grabbed his wrist, and twisted. His wrist popped out of its socket. He collapsed, screaming and rolling on the ground. My second brother, Chen Erniu, didn't want to fight. He had heard what I did to Zhao Tietan's gang. But Wang Hohat screamed at him until he rushed me. I kneed him in the chest and punched him in the face. He flew backward, blood pouring from his nose. I told all of them, come to my door again, and next time it won't be just a dislocated wrist and a bloody nose. Wang Hohat went berserk. She lunged at me, clawing at my face. Before I could stop her, Qingxue came flying out of the house. She grabbed Wang Hohat by the hair and yanked her back, then started slapping her across the face, hard, fast, over and over. This is for bullying my man. This is for letting his wife die. This is for coming here to cause trouble. Wanner charged out with a broom and started whacking Wang Hohat across the back. Mingsui kicked her legs out from under her, shoved her face into the dirt, and told her that if she ever touched our man again, the three of them would break her legs. I stood there watching, genuinely impressed. These three women had been beaten down their whole lives, called cursed, thrown away by their families, told they were worthless. But now they had something to fight for, and they were fearless. The villagers gathered around, laughing and cheering. They said Wang Hohat had it coming after years of mistreating me. I told the women that was enough. They stepped back. Wang Hohat lay in the dirt, bloody and shaking, glaring at us with hatred. I looked down at her and warned her one final time to stay away. She saw something in my eyes that finally scared her into silence. My two brothers limped away, one clutching his wrist, the other his bleeding face. Wang Hohat dragged herself after them. Then old Yang came sprinting up to the gate, drenched in sweat, eyes wide. Chinemo, something huge just happened. Old Yang burst in with the news. Zhao Yukai had collapsed the night before, a stroke. Half his body was paralyzed. And the reason? He found out his wife had been cheating on him for 6 months. The shock, on top of discovering his ledger was gone, was too much. He passed out and hadn't recovered. But there was more. That very morning, men in military uniforms had gone to the commune office, searched Zhao Yotsai's desk and cabinets, and walked out carrying stacks of documents. Nobody at the commune dared say a word. The villagers went wild with excitement. Years of Zhao's bullying, and now it was all coming down at once. Cheated on, struck down, and raided by the army, all in one night. Wang Hohat's face cycled through every color. Minutes ago, she had been demanding I go beg Zhao for forgiveness. Now Zhao was flat on his back with soldiers tearing through his office. She glanced at me nervously. I was standing there perfectly calm, with a slight smile. She could tell something was off, but couldn't figure out what. Her tone changed instantly. She started backpedaling, said she was just talking, didn't mean anything by it. Qingxue shut her down cold, reminding her of every threat she had just made. Wanner and Mingsui piled on, warning her that if she ever came near me again, they would show up at her door every day and tell the whole village exactly what kind of mother she was. Wang Hohat grabbed her 2 injured sons and limped away. The villagers laughed as they went. After things calmed down, Mingsui turned on Wanner, poking her forehead and teasing her mercilessly about sneaking into my bed ahead of everyone else. Wanner turned bright red and stammered that she couldn't help it. I was too much of a gentleman and would never have made the first move, so she might have waited forever. Qingxue laughed and said they needed to learn from Wanner's boldness. I stood there with a red face, coughing awkwardly, pretending I wasn't hearing any of this. Ming-Sue kept teasing Wanner, asking her all sorts of embarrassing questions about the night before. Wanner whispered that I was gentle and always worried about hurting her. I couldn't take it anymore and practically ran out of the house, saying I needed to check on things outside. Ming-Sue nearly fell over laughing at me. Before I left, Ming-Sue told Wanner plainly, next time, it was her turn and Qingxue's. No more cutting in line. Wanner nodded and said she had no regrets. Giving herself to me was the best decision she ever made. I walked around the village to cool off, then came back and sat in the yard thinking. Zhao Yukai was down with a stroke, his office had been raided by the military, and his wife's affair was the talk of the village. Everything was moving according to plan. But I couldn't relax yet. Qian Dehai was still out there. Until he was taken down too, the Zhao family still had a lifeline. Qingxue brought me a bowl of hot porridge. Then she asked me quietly if I had something to do with what happened to Zhao Yukai. She had noticed my late nights and early mornings, and the timing of everything was too perfect to be coincidence. I told her she didn't need to know the details, just that Zhao Yukai brought this on himself. She nodded and said she understood, and that no matter what, she and the other two women would always stand behind me. I reached over and held her hand. She turned bright red, and her heart was pounding so hard I could almost hear it. Then Wanner appeared in the doorway, grinning. She teased Qingxue for blushing, getting her revenge for all the teasing earlier. Then Wanner walked over and wrapped herself around my arm, asking why I was only holding Qingxue's hand and ignoring her. I sat there, surrounded by three women who all wanted my attention, feeling my face burn. I was a man who had hunted wolves and fought gangs, but this was the one battle I had no idea how to win. The three women spent the rest of the day teasing each other and competing for my attention. Wanner clung to my arm and complained I was playing favorites with Qingxue. Qingxue stammered that she only brought me porridge. Ming-Sue leaned in close and whispered something in my ear that made my whole body go stiff. I couldn't take it anymore. I made up an excuse about checking traps in the mountains and bolted out the door like wolves were chasing me. Behind me, I could hear them laughing. Ming-Sue called me hopeless. Wanner pouted that I ran away before she could hold my hand. Qingxue tried to deny everything while the other two cornered her about the hand-holding they caught us doing. I needed distance to think clearly. The situation with Zhao was progressing, but it wasn't over. Qian Dehai was still in his position. Until the military investigation reached him, anything could happen. That night, things got worse at the Zhao house. Zhao Taidan sat by his father's bed, staring at the man who used to run the commune like a king. Now Zhao Yukai lay there paralyzed on one side, drooling, barely able to speak. Li Zuolian cowered in the corner, bruised and sobbing, begging for forgiveness. Zhao Taidan screamed at her that this was all her fault. If she hadn't been cheating, his father wouldn't have collapsed. Then Zhao Youcai's one working hand started shaking. He forced out a few broken words through his twisted mouth. He told his son to find his cousin, Qian Dehai. Something about an account book. While I was at home dealing with the women's teasing, the Zhao family was falling apart. Zhao Yukai regained consciousness just long enough to grab his son's wrist with terrified eyes and force out two words, account book. He told Zhao Taidan to go find Qian Dehai immediately, that everyone would be ruined if they were too late. Then he passed out again. Zhao Taidan had never seen his father that scared. He finally understood, whatever that account book was, it was the most important thing his father owned. He grabbed a flashlight and ran into the night. At Qian Dehai's house in the county seat, the deputy bureau chief was already on edge. He had received word that afternoon that military personnel had raided Zhao Youcai's office at the commune. The military getting involved was his worst nightmare. Soldiers didn't care about local connections or favors. When Zhao Taidan burst in and told him about the stroke, Qian Dehai relaxed for a moment. He thought it was just the wife's affair that caused it. But then Zhao Taidan repeated his father's last words, account book. Find your uncle, or everyone is finished. Qian Dehai's cigarette dropped from his fingers. He exploded. He slapped Zhao Taidan across the face and started raging. He had told Zhao Yukai years ago to destroy those records. That fool had kept them as leverage, probably planning to use them against him someday if things went bad between them. Now the book was missing, and the military had come searching. Qian Dehai paced the room, trying to think. He asked Zhao Taidan who his father had clashed with recently, who could have found and stolen the ledger. Zhao Taidan said the family had too many enemies to count, but when pressed for the most recent conflict, His eyes lit up. There's one. A guy named Chinimo. Qian Dahai asked who Chinimo was. Zhao Taidan told him everything. The fight over Wanner, the broken nose, and that I had recently gotten a hunter's license and seemed close to Captain Zhou Taizhu. The moment Zhou's name came up, Qian Dahai's expression turned ice cold. The same military captain who raided the office was connected to me. He didn't wait to confirm anything. He called in his enforcer, a big thug named Lu Biao, and ordered him to go to Green Mountain Village that very night, grab me, and find out where the ledger was, by any means necessary. Then Qian Dahai pulled out a black leather bag with 30,000 yuan inside, his emergency escape money. 20 years in the police system, and now he was preparing for the worst. Meanwhile at home, I lay awake in bed, thinking. The real target was never just Zhao Yukai, it was Qian Dahai, and I knew he wouldn't sit quietly once he learned about the missing ledger. Wanner came to my door, unable to sleep, worried about retaliation. I told her not to worry. Then Ming Tsue appeared and teased Wanner about sneaking over to my room again. Qing Xue came out too and told everyone to let me rest. I looked at all three of them and promised I would keep this home safe. After they went back to bed, my smile faded. I was ready for whatever came next. At 3 in the morning, I heard it. 3 sets of footsteps outside. My traps around the yard were triggered. Someone had just tripped the wire I had set up. I snapped my eyes open. Enhanced senses from the spring water made every sound crystal clear. The 3 women rushed into my room, whispering urgently. Qing Xue said she heard people outside. Ming Tsue confirmed there was more than one. They had come. Qian Dahai had sent his men. I told the 3 women to leave through the back door and get the village chief. Qing Xue didn't want to go. She grabbed my arm, terrified. But I told her to trust me, the same way she always had. She bit her lip, nodded, and led the other 2 into the darkness. I loaded my rifle and waited. 3 men burst into my yard. Their leader, Lu Biao, kicked down the gate and told me to come out. He sent his 2 thugs toward the main house while he headed for the women's room, licking his lips and muttering something disgusting about wanting a taste. He pushed open the door and found a gun barrel pressed against his forehead. "Say that again," I said. His face went white. Sweat poured down his temples. He stammered that he was from the Public Security Bureau. I told him that real police don't break into homes at 3 in the morning with iron clubs. He was just a burglar impersonating an officer. That made his crime even worse. His 2 men were already down. They had stepped right into the bamboo spike traps I set around the yard. Both were on the ground screaming, stakes through their ankles. I pressed the gun lower, pointing at a part of him no man wants to lose. He dropped to his knees instantly, begging. I asked who sent him. He said Qian Dahai, the deputy bureau chief, wanted me brought in to answer questions about an account book. So Qian Dahai already knew. He was panicking and trying to grab me before the military could act. I knocked Lu Biao out with the rifle, and tied all 3 of them up in my woodshed. Live witnesses were more useful than dead ones. When Qing Xue returned with the village chief, I told him everything. The ledger, Captain Zhou, the military investigation, and now Qian Dahai sending armed men to silence me. The chief was stunned at how far ahead I had planned. I said we needed to get to the militia compound immediately. That was the safest place, military territory where Qian Dahai had no authority. Once he was arrested, it would all be over. The chief sent Old Yang to hitch the ox cart. Within the hour, we were rolling through the dark toward town. Me, the 3 women, and everything we needed. We reached the militia compound before dawn. I jumped off the cart and told the guards I needed to see Captain Zhou. I told the guards who I was, and they recognized me immediately from the shooting exam. One ran to get Captain Zhou while the other led us inside. Zhou was waiting in his lit office, already in uniform. I told him everything. Qian Dahai's men breaking into my home at 3 in the morning, the iron clubs, Lu Biao heading toward the women's room. I explained how I had trapped them and tied them up. Zhou's jaw tightened. He hadn't expected Qian Dahai to move that fast. Then he showed me a telegram on his desk. The military district had approved the investigation. A special team would arrive the next morning. He looked at me and said it plainly. Qian Dahai and the Zhao family were finished. The 3 women nearly collapsed with relief. Qing Xue's eyes went red. Ming Tsue slapped her thigh and cheered. Wanner asked if we were really safe now. I told her that once the military investigation team arrived, no county police chief could stop what was coming. That same night, Qian Dahai realized Lu Biao wasn't coming back. He packed his bags, suitcases full of cash, gold bars, jade, antiques, and tried to flee with his wife and daughter. He told them they were going on a trip. He opened the back door and found a dozen armed soldiers pointing rifles at him. Zhou stood at the front. Qian Dahai tried bluffing, said he was a deputy bureau chief, and Zhou had no authority. Zhou smiled coldly. He brought out Liu Biao and his two thugs, all tied up and beaten. Liu Biao had confessed everything. Then the soldiers opened Qian Dahai's suitcases. Cash, gold, and valuables spilled across the ground, far more than any salary could explain. Finally, Zhou pulled out the account book. He held it in front of Qian Dahai's face and told him every bribe, every theft, every dirty deal was written in black and white. Qian Dahai's legs gave out. He dropped to his knees. They dragged him away. After 3 days of interrogation, Qian Dahai broke completely and confessed to everything. That pulled Zhao Yukai, and Zhao Taidan down with him. Soldiers dragged Zhao Yukai from his sickbed. Zhao Taidan cried and begged when they came for him. The news spread through the village like wildfire. People celebrated in the streets. A few days later, the four of us came home. The case was closed. We had spent days giving statements and testifying. Mingsue stretched and said she was exhausted. Warner leaned against me and asked if Zhao Taidan would really never come back. I ruffled her hair and told her he wouldn't see the outside of a prison for the rest of his life. Qingxue looked at me with soft eyes. I had kept every promise I made. I said I would protect them, and I did. I said I would bring down the Zhao family, and they were gone. The village chief and his wife came by with 2 baskets of eggs. He told me I was the village's savior, that for years, nobody could touch the Zhao family, and now they were gone because of me. He said the eggs were the least he could offer. I tried to refuse, but he insisted. I thanked him and accepted. After they left, I got quiet for a moment. I told the 3 women that I would never forget the kindness people showed me. The village chief lent me money when my wife was dying and helped with the funeral. And the 3 of them, they had taken turns nursing my wife, bringing medicine, washing clothes, and helping with the burial. I remembered all of it. They blushed and said I had done far more for them. Warner said maybe it was fate. She promised that the 3 of them would take care of me the way my late wife would have wanted. Qingxue and Ming Tsue agreed. From now on, we would live as one family. The next morning, I got up before dawn. I grabbed my rifle, bow, and hunting gear and headed into the mountains. Since getting my license, I went hunting every few days. The mountain was my livelihood. After about an hour of hiking through the misty forest, I crouched down and found what I was looking for: fresh wild boar tracks. Big ones, deep prints, no more than 2 hours old. Broken branches, fresh bark scrapings from tusks on the trees. There was a stream ahead with wild yams growing along the bank, perfect feeding ground for boar at this time of year. I moved silently toward the stream, testing every step before putting my weight down. Then I smelled it, the sharp, sour stink of wild boar droppings, very close. I pressed against a tree and listened. Heavy breathing and the sound of something rooting in the dirt just ahead to my left. Found it. I spotted the boar through the leaves, a massive black beast, at least 200 pounds, tusks gleaming in the morning light. I steadied my breathing and raised the rifle. The key was patience. Wild boar have thick skulls, and a bad shot means a wounded, raging animal charging straight at you. I waited for it to lift its head. The moment its ear came into view, I fired. The shot hit its side, not the perfect kill spot, but it punched through the lung. The boar screamed and bolted into the trees. I didn't panic. I followed the blood trail calmly. Dark red blood with foam in it, a lung shot. Fatal. It just didn't know it was dead yet. 200 meters later, the boar collapsed. I kicked it to make sure, then checked the wound. Clean through the lung cavity. About 230 pounds of meat. My first thought was to store it in the space and sell it at the black market. But then I stopped myself. I thought about all the people who had helped me. The village chief who stood up for me again and again. Old Yang who always had my back. And the ordinary villagers who at least didn't turn against me when times were hard. In my past life, I kept everyone at a distance and died alone. This time, I wanted to do things differently. I hid the boar under some brush and went down to find the village chief. When I told him I had a 200-pound wild boar up the mountain, his eyes nearly fell out of his head. He called a group of young men to help carry it down. When they saw the boar, they went crazy with excitement. In an era where most families rarely tasted meat, a whole wild boar was like a miracle. The chief asked what I wanted to do with it. I told him I wanted to share it with the whole village. Everyone was shocked when I said I wanted to share the boar with the whole village. The chief's eyes got wet. He said most people would have kept it all or sold it. The young men who helped carry it down couldn't stop thanking me. I told them it was nothing. We were all neighbors. By the time we reached the village, half of the residents had already gathered at the threshing ground. The chief announced that I was giving the meat to every family, divided by the number of people. The crowd erupted. Women grabbed my hands with tears in their eyes, saying their children hadn't tasted meat in months. I told them it was just the right thing to do. The three women stood at the edge of the crowd watching me. Qingxue smiled and said I always acted before I spoke. Ming-Sue crossed her arms proudly and said nobody else would give away 200 pounds of meat like that. Warner just watched me with soft eyes, whispering that I was wonderful. The young men butchered the boar right there and handed out portions to every household. People left grinning, promising to help me whenever I needed it. Meanwhile, my eldest brother's wife heard the news and ran home to tell Wang Hohat. She burst through the door screaming that I had killed a huge wild boar and was giving it away to the whole village, but not to the Qin family. Wang Hohat shot up from her bed. She had been resting, but the moment she heard about 200 pounds of free meat going to everyone except her, all her aches disappeared. She grabbed her walking stick and started raging, saying she raised me for 20 years and deserved her share. My sister-in-law poured fuel on the fire, complaining that the three widows were strutting around like queens while the Qin family was treated like garbage. Then my two brothers rushed in, having heard the news too. Wang Hohat slammed her stick on the ground and declared they were all going to the threshing ground to demand their share. In her mind, since I was Qin family blood, anything I hunted belonged to them too. Wang Hohat and my two brothers stormed into the threshing ground just as the last portions were being handed out. She slammed her walking stick on the ground and screamed that I was an ungrateful animal, giving meat to strangers but nothing to my own mother. She demanded 2 shares. My brothers chimed in, saying family should come first. I looked at them calmly and asked the whole village to judge. I reminded everyone what happened when my wife was dying. I knelt at the Chun family door begging for help, and they told me her death was my problem. Wang Hohat agreed to cut ties with me that day. Now she smelled meat and came running back. The villagers muttered in disgust. They all remembered. The village chief stepped forward and tore into her. He reminded everyone that he was the one who helped me borrow money for the coffin, because the Chun family refused to lift a finger. He asked what kind of mother abandons her son and then shows up demanding free meat when he succeeds. My 3 women lined up in front of me. Ming-Sue told Wang Hohat she had no right to anything of mine. Qingxue said the whole village knew what the Qin family did. Warner stood tall and said I could give my things to whoever I wanted, and the Chun family didn't qualify. When Wang Hohat saw she was losing, she collapsed on the ground and started her old trick, screaming and crying, calling the 3 women fox spirits, husband killers, and evil stars who had stolen my soul. She wailed about how they were cursed women who brought death to every man they touched. Some villagers shifted uncomfortably. The stigma of being a young widow was real in this era, and Wang Hohat knew how to use it. Warner's eyes went red. Those words, curse, broom star, husband killer, had been stabbed into her heart since childhood. But Qingxue grabbed one hand and Ming-Sue grabbed the other. They told her not to be afraid. They had a man who stood behind them now. Other people's words meant nothing.